get
Hello and welcome to No Confidence. I'm your host, David Merland. Today's special treat, Mr. Kurt Riggin, my mentor, tribal counsel for several federally recognized Native American tribes, and a true warrior, an expert on the limitations of municipal authority under state law, tribal sovereignty, state and federal constitutional matters, criminal procedure, my mentor. I met Kurt in 1996 when I was gravitating away from federal tax law, having proven it futile. The courts don't work. We don't have courts. And when you say courts, it means judges. The judges are the courts. We don't have a judge in America. And in our seminar today, if you want to call it a seminar, it's a discussion of what Kurt Riggin has found in Colorado after leaving Washington about 9 years ago to live in Colorado. Went from bad to worse. The authorities here in Washington were scheming to kill him, and so the U.S. Marshals told him to leave the state and go wherever he want, but stay out of the state. And he chose Colorado, and since then, as you'll hear, he's found that Colorado is easily worse than Washington state. I'm going to post this show on my YouTube channel also, which you have linked from the interior pages of wevgov.com. wevgov.com has a link for YouTube and a link for YouTube 2. You'll find it on the YouTube 2 link unless they tell me to take it down. So I want you to sit back and enjoy this discussion. Parental discretion. There will be profanity. So if you don't want your kids to hear an occasional F-bomb, it's time to clear the room. But you're going to hear a lengthy description of what it's like to live in Colorado as a legal advocate, somebody who knows the law better than the stupid, grubby cops that are walking around that are armed to the teeth. And in Colorado, they got it out for you, man. If you think you know anything about the law, they will simply victimize you in every way possible until you leave the state. Those are the rules in Colorado. So once again, this is a 3.5-hour conversation with Mr. Kurt Riggin. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for tuning in to No Confidence.
It's January 24th, 2015. How are things in Colorado?
Oh, ever interesting, that's for sure. Never a dull moment.
That's too bad.
I have, what's
you
that?
You would think they'd lighten up when it gets cold. So, how long have you lived in Colorado now?
About 9 years now. Almost 10.
That's pretty much long enough to get the lay of the land, isn't it?
Yeah, they're a pretty wild, fast, and loose state as far as law goes.
You talking about bikers?
State of Colorado, and their boys. Excuse me. Yeah, they get away with a whole lot of stuff that doesn't fly in Washington. See, they haven't had somebody like you and I giving the court systems a hard time quite as much as Washington State. I'm sure they had their share of so-called patriots, but they've steamrolled them here brutally. And interestingly enough, a friend of mine found a case from 2007, I think, involving the same county, Jefferson County, involving the same exact charge. The guy was arrested for violating a protection order.
Yeah, Kurt,
so,
I think what we ought to do first is lay out your case, and we'll lay that on top of it. That's kind of the icing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what's happened, what is occurring recently. Why don't we go back a ways and recount some of the stuff you've seen happen there in Colorado before we get to exactly what they're doing to you. There was something about a blind man in a crosswalk.
Oh, yeah. Joseph Kovach. That's a very, that's a good one there. My friend Joseph Kovach, he's blind. He has glaucoma like myself. Only his glaucoma was very advanced, and his mother had both of his eyes removed because of the pain he was in. And so Joe has no eyes. He has glass eyes. And Joe is attempting to cross the corner of Bellevue and Federal, which is a major intersection in Denver. Or actually, a town called Inglewood, which is, a suburb of Denver. And there's no crosswalk signal. So, he can't hear whether the crosswalk is for him or not. So he hears the cars going. So he figures, traffic's flowing that way, now I can walk. He starts walking across the intersection, and a lady hits him in a crosswalk, knocks him like 25 feet, breaks his arm, breaks his wrist, messes him up pretty good. Inglewood police get called, and they come and arrest Mr. Kovach. They show up at the scene. He's sitting on the curb, and his wrist is broken. And this lady gets up, starts talking to him, and said, "Hey, he jumped out in front of me, and I had the right of way because I had a green arrow." And he said, he was pretty pissed at that point. He said, "You stupid bitch." He goes, "I have the right of way." Well, the cops didn't like that, so they handcuffed him. They put handcuffs on his broken wrist, and they took him to jail for destruction of private property.
What property was that?
He broke her windshield and dented her car when she hit him.
That hellion.
Bad blind man. What was he thinking? And here's the funny part. She said, "Well, I saw him in the crosswalk. He didn't stop for me. I had a green light, so I hit him." She said that to the police. So they arrested him, charged him with destruction of private property, and I think jaywalking. I'm not sure. I know they charged him with destruction of private property. And so he didn't know what to do. I mean, he's blind. And he's not used to dealing with the court systems or even with the police. And so I go to Inglewood Court with him. I said, I'll help you out, dude. So I go down there.
That's a criminal charge, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, destruction of private property is definitely a criminal charge. So we get him down there, and I said, we want a preliminary probable cause hearing and a evidentiary hearing. We want a pretrial hearing. So the judge decides, okay, we're gonna have a pretrial hearing, and it was pretty interesting. I got Joe up to testify, and I cross-examined the police officer, which was probably the most interesting cross-examine. I said, "I understand you arrested Mr. Kovach for destruction of private property." He goes, "Yeah, that's right. He jumped out in front of a lady, and he purposely caused damage to her car." I said, "Did you see it? Were you there?" "Well, no, but I got a report from the lady, from a witness," he said. I said, "A witness? You mean the lady that ran him over?" "Oh, well, the lady whose property he destroyed," he said. I said, "Where was Mr. Kovach when he destroyed her property?" He goes, "In Inglewood, at the corner of Bellevue and Federal." I said, "I need a little bit more accurate. Was he on the sidewalk? Was he in the middle of the crosswalk? Where was he exactly?" "Well, evidently from where he was laying," he goes, "he was in the crosswalk." I said, "So let me get this straight. Mr. Kovach was hit in the crosswalk by a car." "Yeah." And I said, "And he's blind. So,
didn't you
ever
ask
heard
him
of the
about
white cane law?"
Yeah, there you go.
You ever heard of the white cane law? She says, no, I never heard of that. I said, well, let's imagine you had heard of it. What do you think the white cane law is? I don't know. I said, well, let me help you out there. The white cane law is written for people who are blind, just like Mr. Kovac. And that law is put on the books so incidents like this don't happen. I said, our legislators were smart enough to know that, gee, if a blind person gets run down in a crosswalk, that according to the law, he has the right of way. Now, why do you think that is? So, how am I supposed to know? I said, well, because the people driving the cars, they have eyesight. They can see him. He can't see them. Oh, well, yeah. I said, so he can't avoid them. And I said, do you realize how many crosswalks the city of Inglewood has that are made for blind people? Out of 2,200? No. I said 2. And there isn't one at this intersection, is there? Well, no. So I get the, so I cross there and examine Joey. Says, yeah, I was, going across the crosswalk, and all of a sudden this lady runs me over, and then she starts yelling at me. You son of a bitch, you're out in the road. I have the right of way. And he, called her a bitch and said, I have the right of way, lady. I have a white cane. Well, so I get the officer on the stand, because he got testified and told me his story. Let's get the officer on the stand. I said, let me ask you a question, officer. Before that. I had Joe up on the stand, and I said, Joe, can I see one of your eyes? Because I asked the officer before, because I cross-eyed the officer first, and I asked him beforehand. I said, what was your probable cause to arrest Mr. Kovac? He goes, well, he had bloodshot, watery eyes and a glassy stare. And so I knew he was on drugs. 18 years of police experience, I could tell he was on drugs. I said, just by looking at his eyes? He goes, that's correct. He had bloodshot, watery eyes and a glassy stare. And I said, well, that's very interesting. I said, so your training teaches you that you can tell by looking at somebody's eyes whether they're on drugs. He goes, that's right. I said, that's interesting. Thank you. And I had him step down. I get Joseph up, and I said, Joe, can I see one of your eyes? He said, yeah, okay, sure. He pops out one of his glass eyes. And, this one, the officer was still on the stand. So the officer's still on the stand. I'm asking him stock questions. I go over to Joe, and I said, Joe, can I see one of your eyes real quick? So he pops out his glass eye. I stick it right underneath the officer's nose, close enough to where he could touch it with his tongue. And he's trying to crawl out of the witness stand because he did not want to be anywhere near that glass eye. It creeped him out. And I said, now, officer, let me ask you a question. Does this eye look bloodshot to you? He goes, well, I don't know. He maybe had a different set of eyes. I said, well, that's a good point. I said, Joe, let me ask you a question. Do you have a spare set of bloodshot eyes you can put in when you want to catch a buzz? He goes, no, Social Security only bought me one set of eyes. I wouldn't know if they're bloodshot or not because I don't have any. I said, well, officer, are these bloodshot? He goes, well, it appears they're not. I said, he testifies these are the only set of eyes he has. So, I mean, and you do understand that maybe the fact that they're glass could have attained for the glassy stare? Yeah, he was not digging that one. And the judge said, oh, we're going to have I'm calling this a recess in my chambers because he did not want The judge did not want this getting on the public record. And they decided, well, we're going to dismiss Mr. Kovach's case. Oh, okay, let's see. You got a blind man hit in a crosswalk, and now you're going to dismiss the case instead of charging him with destruction of private property? Well, you guys are geniuses. So I really appreciate you doing such a good job, Your Honor. So yeah, they had to throw out Mr. Kovach's case, because he was a blind man run down in a crosswalk by a crazy lady who actually said on a report, well, I saw the white cane, but I had a green arrow. And he didn't stop for me, so I hit him. Well, what does that tell you? She hit him on purpose because he didn't stop for her. My brother had a real similar situation. He was on a motorcycle going through an intersection in the left lane. There was a guy in the left-hand turn lane, stopped to turn left. Another guy in the right-hand lane stopped to take a right-hand turn. And he goes through the intersection on his motorcycle, and a lady runs a red light, takes a left turn, and chases him across two lanes and hits him. And it took the doctors 4 hours to dig the paint chips from her license plate out of the bone in his leg. Not to mention breaking his hip and messing him up real bad. And at a deposition for his civil court suit, the lady gets up and testifies, well, the other two people in the other lane stopped for me. He didn't stop for me, so as far as I'm concerned, he got what he deserved. Her attorney just threw his pencil in the air. He just, oh shit, what do I do? Oh well, this is over. He knew his case was pretty much over at that point.
Right.
But yeah, she was all indignant. Yeah, he didn't stop for me. He was, I had a green arrow, so therefore I had to hit him.
So the cop, the cop that cited the blind man, in your experience there in Colorado, would you say he's run-of-the-mill, or he's by far the worst cop you encountered all this time?
Oh, I'd say he's your average cop. He's your average. He's pretty much how they all are. I mean, there's a few good ones that are out here, but I'll tell you what, not many. I've only met a couple of good ones. They're so used to getting away with shit, up to and including murder in this state, that they have no fear. They're immune.
Now, for people that have never heard of you, why don't you outline some of your background? Where were you and what were you doing in 1992?
Oh boy, what was I doing in 92?
More importantly, what did you start doing in 1993 that you hadn't been doing in 1992? Didn't you get in a wreck?
Oh yeah, 1993. In July of '93, I was in a really severe motor vehicle accident where I was on vacation.
What were you doing before? What were you doing before that?
Oh, before that, actually, way before that, back in '84, I was charged with I forget a bunch of different charges, and I started looking into the court rules and the laws, and I started going, wait a minute, there's something hinky here. The way these guys are doing things this doesn't work. So I filed some briefs about how their court system is in violation of their own constitution and their own laws. And I filed them with the head court administrator, with the state Supreme Court, the Attorney General, the Governor's office. I think one for Congress and one for the Senate as well. And I pointed out the quandary of problems they had with the fact that they didn't have one elected judge in the state of Washington. And at that point, all their judges were just like here in Colorado. They were all appointed. And I'm not sure if any of them had any oaths of offices or bonds at that time either. And I brought that to their attention. I also brought to the attention that they were in violation of federal law, since federal law required all public servants to have oaths of offices and bonds on or before the day they went into office, state and federal law. Well, it wasn't long after that they had what was called the Court Reform Act of 1984. And before the Court Reform Act, if you got charged with speeding, you could go to jail for it. They would jail you for that. If you got charged with no insurance, they would throw you in jail and they would impound your car. And I pointed out that you guys are violating your own state laws. You're not in compliance with your own Constitution, your own laws. This is before I went to the National Archives and dug up the original Constitution for the state of Washington, which the 1878 Walla Walla Constitution is the only one that exists in the National Archives for the state of Washington. And it's found in miscellaneous document number 55, oddly enough. But but in Colorado, they're doing the same exact thing that Washington did before 1984.
Well, hang on. Before you jump forward to present day again, what were you doing for a living in the 1980s?
I was teaching lost wax casting, bright cut diamond setting, and teaching jewelry making, and I also taught martial arts classes. I had a Kempo studio where I taught Kempo and Pushinyang Gong Fu down on 2nd and James in downtown Seattle. So I was busy making jewelry and teach martial arts.
Long before your accident in 1993, it sounds like, 9 years before, what was the outcome of when you brought it to their attention that the judges in the courts were astray in certain ways here in Washington? What did the system do to accommodate you?
And I pointed out that you guys have criminalized every traffic offense, and where there's no mens rea involved. And to be charged with the crime, you have to have mens rea, which is the criminal intent to commit the culpable act. There's two basic elements to every criminal charge. One is mens rea, the other one is actus reus, which is Latin. And mens rea means the criminal intent to commit the culpable act, and then actus reus is the criminal act itself. So you can commit a criminal act, but if you have no intention to commit that criminal act, they can't convict you, because every criminal act has to involve the basic element of actus reus, or criminal intent. And I pointed out, I don't have any criminal intent to speed or to not have insurance, and you're criminalizing the poor, and you're violating state and federal law. So they had what was called the Court Reform Act of 1984. And what that did was that decriminalized all traffic offenses. So you couldn't go to jail for speeding. You couldn't go to jail unless you were, negligent driving, doing, like 120 or something like that. And you couldn't go to jail for all these other offenses they were jailing people for. They decriminalized them and made them infractions instead. And they also they fired every judge in the state and held elections. And the judges had to be elected after that, not appointed. They also had to have oaths of office, and they had to have surety bonds on file on or before the day they went to office, as required by law. So
Well,
in '84, Washington fixed the way they.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, in '84, Washington fixed the way they did business, and evidently, no other state seemed to pay attention to that because Colorado's been doing it the same way. They pull you over for no insurance, they impound your car, and they take you to jail. And if you get charged with a speeding ticket here in Colorado, you're going to love this. Their Supreme Court put together a rule that says you don't have a right to discovery in a traffic case. Let me repeat that. In Colorado, according to the Colorado State Supreme Court rules, you don't have the right to discovery in a traffic case. Now, you could go to jail, but you don't have a right to discovery. Now, I'm pretty sure that's a constitutional right.
So in 1993, you got in an accident, and wasn't it the hoops you had to jump through to address that accident really that roped you into legal advocacy?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. That, and well, I'd kind of back in '84 is when I started kind of studying the law, thanks to a gal named Betty Howard in Richland, Washington. I'd talked to her before. She had all these law books. She was really a genius. She was an incredible lady. Too bad she died from E. coli poisoning thanks to Dole spinach. But I call her up from the courthouse because they're saying, "Oh, you're gonna have to enter a plea," blah blah blah. I call her up and said, "Hey, I'm not gonna go along with the shit they're trying to pull on me. So, what do I do?" And she goes, "Well, first thing, don't enter a plea. No matter what you do, tell them you want to confer with counsel before you enter a plea. So don't enter a plea." So I refused to enter a plea. So then they set my court date, and she said, "Now, here, I'm going to give you a copy." She gave me a copy of the court rules that said, you should probably start by reading these. So that's where I started. I read the court rules. I got, and I'm kind of cursed with, if I read something, I usually remember it. And so I read the court rules, and I go to court after I refused to enter a plea, and I think I used IRLJ 2.1 or 2.2D at that time.
IRLJ is infraction rules for limited jurisdiction. Go ahead.
Yeah, IRLJ, fractional rules for courts of limited jurisdiction. 2.2D is a rule that says if they don't file that citation within 48 hours, and I had to go down, or I went down and got a copy of the docket, which proved when the case was filed. And we found out the case wasn't filed until 5 days after the citation was issued. So I said, hey, under IRLJ 2.2D, I demand this case be dismissed because it wasn't filed within 48 hours as required by the court rule. Now I guess they've extended that for infractions up to 5 days. Because they got tired of getting their asses handed to them because the cops weren't filing the citations in a timely fashion. So now they got 5 days to file that according to the IRLJ.
Well, you have a bad attitude.
What's that?
I said you have a bad attitude.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, I made him dismiss that case, and then, after the Court Reform Act, they seemed to be real pissed at me. In '86, I was in 2 motor vehicle accidents. I was riding my motorcycle, my 76 Super Glide, I think it was, down this street, and this guy in a 4-wheel drive truck ran a stop sign, and I laid down the bike to avoid getting run over and shattered my left elbow. So I got my elbow in a big old cast, and I think it was that was July 21st of '86, and then on July 13th of '86, and then August 21st, I think is what it was. I was going to the chiropractor because I found this chiropractor was really good, and I had a big old cast on my arm. And I'm driving back from the chiropractor, and I go through this intersection in Kennewick, Washington, and Columbia Center Boulevard, I think. in Clearwater was the intersection, a major intersection there. I'm going through the green light, and this kid takes a left turn and hits me head on, and I guess he was doing probably close to 50. I was doing about 35. And I was in a little 78 Dodge Omni, and he was in a 3/4 ton pickup. And I was pinned in that car for about 4 hours with the cast on. So the car crunched up like it was supposed to, but the steering wheel shaft had split my sternum and pinned me into the car. So they had to take the jaws of life, cut the steering wheel shaft, and cut away part of the car to get me out of it. And so I was there for what seemed like 4 hours, but it was probably about maybe an hour. But so I was pretty messed up from that accident. It took me a long time to recover from that 86 accident because it busted a lot of my ribs, split my sternum, and re-broke my arm in the cast. And I didn't know, they didn't figure that out for almost 2 weeks. I kept saying my arms hurt like hell. Oh yeah, well, that's pretty common. And finally I said, listen, man, you know I was in an accident a couple weeks ago. My arm is hurting worse than when before the accident. Yeah, well, we'll take a look at it, And he x-rays my arm in the cast and realizes I broke it in 3 places that weren't broken before. So here I had 3 broken bones in my arm, and in the forearm and in the upper arm, and they weren't hep to it at all. So they had to and evidently one of the brakes started to heal wrong, so they had to go in with a rubber mallet and re-break it and reset it and put another cast on it. Well, that was one of my more pleasant experiences. I'm going to break your arm for you.
Yeah, wasn't this part of that training program to become a doctor for the jail system?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I believe you're right. So, I got in these accidents in 86. I was pretty messed up. It took me a long time. And then in 93, I got hit head on. I was on vacation in Portland, Oregon, again on my motorcycle. I went all the way down Highway 101 from the very tip of the Washington coast all the way down to California, through Oregon, down to California. And at that time I had a martial arts studio on 2nd and James in Seattle, and where I was teaching martial arts during the week. And on the weekends, starting Friday at 1 o'clock, I would open up and run an after-hours club that I ran from 1 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning. And I had a guest list of 450 private guests, and I served booze till 6 in the morning, and you could smoke dope in my place, whatever you wanted to do. It was all good. And so I did a pretty brisk business. I pulled in a little over $2,000 a week, which covered my expenses because the martial arts studio wasn't paying for itself. It was very expensive. It's like $2,000 a month for that studio, and that was, that was in the 90s, 93, early 90s. So I decided I'm going to go down 101, go on vacation. I got somebody that's running my after-hours club for me. Not the brightest guy in the book, but, he was a good guy. So I get down to the California border, and we're driving down 101 into California. Me and a friend of mine that owned a nightclub called the Phoenix Underground, a guy named Rick Wyatt. And I get this, I call in to check how things are going, and my friend says, oh man, they raided us. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, the cops came in, and I didn't hit the switch. I had a little system going where you went through the front door, you had a room with another door, and a guy sitting there with a little podium. And he checked your ID, checked to see if you were on one of the 450 people on the guest list. And if you weren't, you didn't get in the door, period. And so the cops showed up. We had a system where if the cops showed up, we had a switch. We had 2 switches. One was a green light, one was a red light. He flips the switch for the red light, and all the money in the club disappears. We had tip jars, stuff like that. And so everybody grabbed all the tip jars, make sure there was no money anywhere. So what I had was a private club where I served booze until 6 o'clock in the morning to private guests that were on a guest list. Totally legal, as long as you don't charge for it. So what I did is I said, okay, to get in, it's $10. You get a ticket. Each ticket gets you 3 drinks for $10. So, a drink only costs you $3.33. And, it's between 1 and 6. So, it was the only game in town, the only after-hours club in town at the time. So it was very popular. I had the guys from Nirvana, Soundgarden, all your strippers, all your waitresses, bartenders. I mean, where do you go when you work till 3 o'clock in the morning and you get off work at 3? Where do you go to unwind? Not many places open at 3 o'clock in the morning except maybe Denny's. So, I had the hot spot in town. It was, the only after-hours club in downtown Seattle at that time. And that was during the grunge era. So, I got to meet a lot of the band people, got to hang out with a lot of your grunge crowd and everything. And it was very interesting times back then.
Hey, did you ever have a case where a stripper had been cited for wearing translucent clothing and dancing?
Yeah, my girlfriend, actually, a gal at the time, a gal by the name of Helene Trehu. She was, this is what was really interesting. She was very intelligent. She had a degree from UVA, and she was a costume designer. And she did all the costuming designing for a couple different movies. One of them was Toy Soldiers, and I think she did The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and a couple of them. But if you watch the movie Toy Soldiers, you'll see a name, Helene Overton. That's her. She was the costume gal, and so she was really intelligent. She's sharp, graduated with honors from UVA, and they come in and they had it set up to where a couple days or a couple weeks before the election, they would pay, actually for months before the election, they would pay these officers, they'd give them like $300 a day. And they had specific officers that would go to the strip clubs and they would have lap dances with that $300. And then they would write a report, that Tiffany, did a lap dance and she actually sat on his lap and touched him and blah, blah, blah. So a couple weeks before the election, they come in and they raid the club and they arrest, I think probably about 20 or 30 dancers. And they charge each one of them with 3 counts of violating the standard of conduct code. And that says, they dressed in less than opaque attire. That they did this, and this. Well, so they charged her. They said, you're going to get 90 days per charge. That's 3 charges at 90 days per charge. You're looking at 9 months in jail. And I started looking over the case, and I'm looking over the charges of, violation of the standard of conduct code. And I realized the license they issued, you get an entertainer's license from the city of Seattle. And that license says this is a license to dress in less than opaque attire, do this, and this. Well, the license was verbatim, word for word, what they were charging her with criminally for doing. So, to simplify that, she had a license that said she could do everything that they were charging her criminally for doing. And so they charged her with violating the standard of conduct code, and then I pointed out, here's the thing. Her license gives her the authority to dress in a less than opaque attire, to do this, and this, everything that you guys are charging her for criminally. So how can you license her? How can you charge her criminally for something you issued her a license to do a couple of years ago? And not only her, but every other stripper in the club is being charged with these violations of standard of conduct code, and they're all licensed to do these things. That's like saying, here's your driver's license, but if we catch you driving, we're going to give you 9 months in jail. How does that work?
And
exactly?
That's only if you drive in less than opaque clothing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So, so that was really one of the, it was a great one, because I said, how do you guys charge somebody criminally for something you're licensing them to do? It's word for word. What you're saying they're doing illegally is word for word what you have on their license that you are licensing them to do. So what is a license? I said, isn't a license something that the state grants you a privilege to do something that would normally be illegal? So if you give me a driver's license and I'm driving around without one before, I guess driving around without one before that would be illegal, right? Well, according to them, yeah. So if you give me a license to do something and then you catch me doing it, I'm pretty sure you can't arrest me. You sure as hell can't charge me criminally because you licensed me to do it. So they didn't like that one very well. And what was really funny is the judge goes, well, where's your attorney? She goes, well, I don't have an attorney. He goes, well, listen, little miss, what type of education do you have that makes you think you can represent yourself in a court of law where you could go to jail? He goes, do you even have a high school diploma? And she goes, oh yeah, I have a high school diploma, but I have better than that. She goes, I have a degree from UVA. I graduated with honors from UVA. She goes,
which is
the school built by Thomas Jefferson, designed and built by Thomas Jefferson, with Thomas Jefferson's personal library, law library, as part of their library. And she goes, where did you go to school? And the prosecutor got up and left. He walked out of the room. And this is during the hearing, because he didn't want to tell her that he went to school in Cheney, which is Eastern Washington. Not much of a college, I understand.
No, UVA is University of Virginia.
Yeah, it's an Ivy League college built by Thomas Jefferson, designed and built by Thomas Jefferson. So, yeah. So he didn't want to know that. He was like, where did you go to school? It's none of your business. Well, you're asking me what my qualifications are. What's that?
Podung, America.
Yeah, exactly. You're asking me what my qualifications are to defend myself. Well, I need to know what your qualifications are to be a judge. Well, I went to Cheney. Cheney. Oh, where's that? He goes, well, that's in Eastern Washington. She goes, I never heard of it. So yeah, that was that was one of the better times in court when he goes, do you even have a high school diploma? Yeah, I graduated with honors from UVA. Where did you go to school? Suddenly he realized he was in trouble at that point. But
it should happen to every judge.
Yeah, exactly. But
so,
she beat that case, and then we helped a few other dancers out that were getting charged. And actually wrote up. Here's what was really funny part about that. If you were a stripper that worked for Rick's, a strip club over on Lake City Way, and you got charged with a violation of the Standard of Conduct Code, you had Gil Levy as your attorney, and they took money out of your check to pay Gil Levy. Oh, you're automatically, that's your attorney. Well, Gil Levy had a problem with showing up. He never showed up for the strippers' hearings. And here they're taking money out of their check to pay him, and yeah, most of the time he never bothered even showing up for their hearings. So here they're paying this attorney out of their paycheck, and he never shows up. So I said, yeah, sorry, Gil Levy is not her attorney, and you are not taking any money out of her check because she never consented to it. You better show me something that she signed in writing that allows you to do that. Well, they didn't have anything, so they had to give her money back that they were taking out of her check for her so-called attorney. And what a racket! That bastard was, he was getting a new client every time they got a citation in the club, and he got paid, didn't have to do anything for it, and he usually get him to plead guilty or. So, it was quite the racket they had going on there. And for all I know, they probably started it back up again after I beat their ass. Once people forget. It's kind of like the 520 bridge. Okay? You guys are aware, you're aware of the 520 bridge there between Bellevue and Seattle?
Goes across Lake Washington.
Yep, the floating bridge. Right. Yeah, no, it's not the floating bridge, but 520 bridge is, it's one of the main bridges going across. Well, when they built that 520 bridge, they had a governor by the name of Rossellini. Well, people started noticing that, hey man, this toll booth has been on this bridge for years, and people started complaining. How long are they going to have a toll booth on the bridge? Well, when a group of people demanded an audit. And when they audited it, they found that they had collected 5 times the cost of that bridge at the toll booth. Let me repeat myself. The state of Washington had collected 5 times the cost of the bridge at the toll booth. So they paid for that bridge 5 times over.
It hurts.
And Rossellini,
It hurts.
Yeah, and Rossellini, to try to cover his ass, wrote a bill, and it went right through. And that bill said they could never put another toll booth on the 520 bridge ever again, since they had not only paid for that bridge, but they had paid for all future maintenance of that bridge, because they paid for it 5 times over. When you pay for 5 bridges and you only get one, yeah, that's pretty much paying for all future maintenance of that bridge, wouldn't you say? So, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, they decided they were going to put a toll booth on that bridge. And I was sitting over in the University of Washington Law Library, and I was listening to these guys talking about it. And evidently one of them was a University of Washington law professor. I don't remember his name. And I said, do you realize that there's this law that I found that, signed by Rossellini, saying that they could never put another toll booth on the bridge? He goes, oh, wow, I didn't know about that. I said, well, maybe we should kind of bring it to their attention. So this law professor from the University of Washington brought this information forward that I provided him, saying that, Governor Rossellini, since they'd collected 5 times the cost of the bridge, passed a law saying that they could never put another toll booth on that bridge, ever. Well, so we beat their ass and stopped them from putting a toll booth on that bridge 20 years ago. Well, they don't have a booth on that bridge, but now they got an electronic toll. So if you go across the 520 bridge, you automatically get billed a toll, which I sent a friend of mine down to Olympia to look for that law signed by Rossellini. And he tried finding it, and they made it unavailable to him. They said, oh, well, that law's been buried. Buried? He said, well, I need a shovel then, because I need a copy of that law. And they said, oh, well, you know, that law's no good anymore. He goes, great, show me where it was repealed. Well, they never repealed it. The Rossellini bill was never repealed. But yet they have a toll on that bridge to this day. Now here's the thing. You can actually legally put a toll booth on a bridge once it's built with public funds. And you can collect tolls on that bridge until that bridge is paid for in full. But once that bridge is paid for in full, you can no longer accept tolls on that bridge. Well, they didn't get that, evidently, back in Rossellini's day, because they collected 5 times the cost of the bridge. So, if people, you know, had a clue there in Washington, they would dig up the Rossellini bill and say, excuse me, but you've committed fraud on every person driving across this bridge. You've committed a crime by extorting money from them. And they need to charge the assholes that caused this. They need to go after the public officials that put that toll booth on that bridge. Or excuse me, not a booth, toll. See, by taking out the booth, well, there's no booth. Well, I believe booth isn't the key word to that law. Just because there isn't a toll booth doesn't mean what they're doing is illegal. The fact that there's a toll is the key word to that bill. Toll, not booth. Just because they can't put a toll booth doesn't mean they can put a toll on it. So here they got their 520 bridge, and now they've been collecting tolls on it for years, and everything they've done is illegal. Every toll they collected on that 520 bridge is illegal as hell. Now, if they want to build a new one next to it, they can put a toll booth on that son of a bitch until it's paid. But they can't put a toll on a paid-for bridge. You can't do it. Because the toll is to pay for the bridge. So, you know, because of ignorance of the law, all these states, not just Washington, Colorado, California, Oregon, I mean, all these states, they get away with so much criminal shit because nobody knows. Nobody knows it's illegal. You know, here they had, several years ago, they had a guy by the name of Anthony Lobato Jr. He was a 78-year-old, very infirm gentleman who was staying in a second-story apartment in a hospital bed. And evidently he had a nephew that beat up his wife and managed to get away 2 weeks prior. So 2 weeks later, the Denver police show up. They get a ladder, and one of them goes through the top floor window of this apartment. They go in through the window with this ladder without a warrant, by the way, looking for this guy who had a domestic violence charge against him. And they see Mr. Anthony Lobato Jr. in a hospital bed, armed with a Coke can. And they shot him 8 times in the chest, and Mr. Lobato was 110 pounds, 5 feet, 4 inches tall.
And he was armed. He was armed with what?
With a Coke can.
A Coke can. Okay.
He had a can of Coke in his hand, and the cop shot him 8 times in the chest for being armed with a Coke can. Well, they couldn't find the gun. They realized, oh, it was a can of Coke. And you know how easy it is to mistake a can of Coke for a gun. I mean, they almost are identical. You could barely tell them apart, right?
Now, hang on.
Now that officer didn't get charged.
Just a second. There in Colorado, just a few weeks ago, did you hear about that case where a guy pointed a banana at the cop and was charged for felony menacing?
Yeah. Yeah, welcome to wonderful Colorado.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, you know how hard it is to tell fruit from a gun. They almost look like, I mean, you know, you look at a banana and you would swear it's a gun. It looks just like a gun, right? Well, evidently, the cops here have banana-shaped guns, so, you know, I can explain the confusion.
So did you have something else you wanted to add about the guy in the apartment?
Oh, yeah. They, you know, the officer was never charged. Now, the officer went through a second-story apartment window without a warrant, with a ladder, and shot an unarmed old man in a hospital bed, and he was never charged. He did get, however, a 6-month suspension with pay. Now, where I come from, we call that a paid vacation. So evidently, they taught him the valuable lesson that if you shoot an unarmed old man armed with a Coke can in a hospital bed in a second-story apartment that you didn't have a warrant to enter through the window, that's okay, and you know you obviously need a vacation after doing that, paid. So that sent a big message. You know, if a cop shoots you accidentally, he's going to get a vacation, a paid vacation. And, you know, you get to have a funeral.
Say, in Colorado, if you're driving without insurance, you get a ticket. How long ago was that law repealed?
Oh no, it's that was repealed in 2003. July of 2003, they repealed the mandatory insurance law. And not only do you just get a ticket, but they impound your vehicle and they take you to jail. They arrest you for no insurance in this state.
For violating a repealed law?
Yeah. Yep.
Paradise.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, you know, most people don't bother looking. And if they do, they don't bother bringing it up to court because, you know, they probably aren't going to stand much of a chance. But in my case, you know, interestingly enough, 8 years ago while I was in Montana, they issued a protection order against me because they can't call it a restraining order because it doesn't comply with the federal restraining order laws. So they renamed it and called it a protection order. And a lady swore that I threatened to sue her, and that I looked at her like I was going to get her. And they issued a permanent protection order against me 8 years ago, for 9 years ago now, for threatening, looking at her in a threatening manner and threatening to sue her. So here I get this protection order issued, and they never served me with it. So I was never served with any kind of protection order. And when I sent somebody down to the courthouse to get records of this protection order and the proof of service and everything, they had a proof of service with Dr. Glazer's name on it, person I live with, and her name was crossed out and my name was written above it. And that was the only proof of service they had on file for the last 8 years for this case. Now, where I come from, when you take a legal document and you cross out somebody else's name that's typed in and you write somebody's name above it, what did you do to that document?
Invalidated it.
You just invalidated it. You avoided that document because you can't cross out somebody else's name. I mean, if that's how they did things in court, that's pretty fast and loose and, I don't know, sloppy. Yeah, here's the proof of service, we'll just cross this one out and write this name in. Let's save. It's all good. Same, right? So that's the only thing they've had on the file for the last 8 years is a proof of service. Well, I kept demanding, I said, I'd demand a copy of the proof of service for this case. And they kept saying, oh, yeah, we don't have to give you that. We don't have to give you that. I subpoenaed it. Finally, they dug it up and they realized, holy shit, this ain't worth the paper it's printed on. So just a couple months ago, now here's what's funny is I've been sending people almost every year to the court that were going for something else, and I'd say, hey, while you're down there, go pull a copy of my proof of service from my file. So I had proofs of service going back 8 years, every year. And every one of them has a date stamp on it. Okay? Time date stamp and a file stamp that says file. So a couple months ago, I go to court to meet the prosecutor. He says, well, come on down and meet me at this courtroom, and we'll go over the file together. I'll let you look at your discovery. Because they told me, oh, by the way, they said, you're going to trial on December 8th, and unless you pay $188, you're not getting your discovery, and you're not getting counsel unless you pay for it, and you're not getting the jury unless I pay for it. And even if I paid for it, she wasn't going to give me a jury. She goes, you're getting a bench trial. I said, I object. You can't try me without discovery, without counsel, and without a jury. I said, that's a direct violation of the federal laws, the Constitution of both state and federal. It's a violation of the state Constitution and federal Constitution. And I said, I'm pretty sure it's official misconduct on your part, perjury of your oath. And that's at the very best. And I said, you're in clear violation of federal law. She goes, well, good thing we're in the state of Colorado. We don't have to abide by federal law, quote unquote. I'm like, I'd love to hear you say that to a federal judge. So she tells me, no counsel, no discovery, no jury. And you're going, and she goes, and on the 8th of December, you will be tried and sentenced that day. I said, well, ma'am, aren't you getting a little ahead of yourself? What are you talking about? I said, I'm pretty sure you can't sentence me until I've been convicted of something. Well, you know what I mean. I said, yeah, unfortunately, I know exactly what you mean. I've already been convicted. I said, in your mind, I'm already convicted. So all you got to do is get around to sentencing me. Oh, yeah, and that there's that other part. You also got to pretend to try me, right? So I filed the complaint. I went to the head court administrator, and I said, I demand a jury trial. The judge is telling me I'm not going to get one. I demand one, and I understand that's your job. So she said, well, yeah, if you demand a jury trial, you can fill out this form. So I wrote on the form, I demand a jury trial. She scheduled me a jury. So the next hearing I went to, the judge was pissed. Oh, you went over my head, huh? I said, excuse me, ma'am? She goes, oh, you got yourself a jury trial. I said, oh, yeah, I did. I said, I had to go to the one person who can't deny me my jury trial. That's your head court administrator. I said, but, I appreciate your efforts of attempting to keep me from getting a jury trial.
Now, Kurt, this case is over a violation of that protection order. What did you do to deserve that?
Well, on 2012, the day before Thanksgiving, we get a call early in the morning from Chase Manhattan Bank. And they said, are you guys making a purchase at Walmart? And I said, no, we don't buy anything from Walmart. We try not to use our dollar to make the world a worser place. So, we believe in using the power of the dollar. We don't buy anything from Walmart unless we absolutely have to. And she goes, well, your credit card's making its third purchase at Walmart this morning. I said, well, it's stolen, and we'd like to report that now. So we report the stolen credit card. Then we find out not only did this guy make 3 purchases at Walmart, but he went over and filled his gas tank at a Shell station on 38th at Kipling, and then went and paid his Cricket bill with another stolen credit card. So he used 3 stolen credit cards altogether. 1 at Walmart, 1 at the gas station, and 1 to pay his Cricket bill. So we called the Wheat Ridge Police Department and said, hey, somebody broke into the car, stole the purse, and stole credit cards, and we have videotape of them using it at the Shell station and at the Walmart. And the Wheat Ridge police told us, we're too busy. Sorry, we can't come out and take a report from you. So evidently they were too busy to take a report on a felony crime. And so I go, oh shit. So I get dressed. I'm in bed. I get dressed and I go out and I start going down the block because it's a garbage day for a lot of people and everybody's got a garbage can outside. Well, what is the first thing a thief does when he steals a pocketbook or a purse? Do you know?
Yeah, they get rid of it by throwing it away.
Exactly. They take what they want, the cash, the credit cards out of it, and they throw it in the nearest garbage can. So, using common sense, I start going up the block looking through garbage cans to try to find my, the purse or the pocketbook that they stole. And, hold on a second. Let me call you back in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. No, not you. And so I try to look for the pocketbooks or purse. I'm looking through the garbage cans, and this crazy lady that got a restraining order against me 8 years ago for threatening to sue her, she comes running out her front door, yelling and screaming at me and taking pictures of me. You bastard, you're going to jail. So I'm walking down the sidewalk. I didn't look through any of her garbage cans. I asked for permission. I asked permission of the people that had their garbage cans out there. Hey, you mind if I look through your garbage can? I'm looking for a purse. Yeah, no problem. They let me look through the garbage can. So, I look through there. Well, she comes out, takes pictures of me, and I flip her the bird. I scratch my nose with my middle finger and tell her to have a nice day under my breath as I walk. And she's 4 houses from me. She lives 4 houses away from me. By the time I walked those 4 houses from her house to mine, I had 3 cop cars in the front of my house. Now, they were too busy.
City of Wheat Ridge.
Yeah. 3 Wheat Ridge cops were in front of my house by the time I walked 4 houses down the block. Now, these are the same assholes that less than an hour earlier were too busy to take a report of stolen credit cards. And I figured, oh, well, great, they're down here. They're here to take a report about the stolen credit cards. I said, so have you had any other people with their cars broken into? He says, what are you talking about? I said, you're here to take a report about about somebody breaking into our car and stealing credit cards, right? He goes, oh, no. I'm here because you harassed somebody that you had a protection order against you. I said, what? He says, yeah, you went into that lady's house up the street and you went into her yard and you yelled at her and you threatened her. I said, say what? I said, I have a witness. I didn't go in her yard. I got a witness that was standing right here the whole time. I walked up the street. I walked past her house. I never stepped foot off the sidewalk. Never once went in her yard. Never said a word to her. He said, did you flip her the bird? Did you flip her off? I said, I don't know. Maybe I did. I scratched my nose with my middle finger, but I never made any gesture towards her. I said, I always scratch my nose with my middle finger. See? And I demonstrated to him. Here's me scratching my nose with my middle finger. He said, you better not do that to me. I said, to you? Am I touching you? I said, am I harassing you? What, do you got a protection order against me too? He says, if I think you committed a crime, I'm going to come back and arrest you. I said, yeah, well, good luck with that. So he went up the street to go talk to the old lady. And I go tell the old lady, tell my old lady, hey, I'm going to run to the bank and see if I can straighten out this stolen credit card situation, because I had a bad feeling this asshole was going to come back looking for me. Because they're idiots, these guys are dumb as rocks. And he's, one of the bigger rocks. So I go to the bank, doing my business to try to take care of stolen credit cards that they didn't have any time to help us with. And, of course, I get a call. The old lady says, hey, the police are here and they want to talk to you. And they said, if you're not here in 5 minutes, they're going to issue a warrant for your arrest. I said, yeah, put me on the phone. So she gives him the phone. He says, if you're not here in 3 minutes, I'm going to issue a warrant for your arrest. I said, yeah, well, if you were a judge, I'd be all kinds of worried, but you're just a fucking idiot cop. I said, you're just a moron cop that wouldn't know the law if it hits you upside the head in book form. So I ain't too worried. I said, go ahead and do what you feel you can do. I said, as far as I'm concerned, you can eat the corn out of my shit. Probably shouldn't have said that. But I was kind of pissed because I've been dealing with this idiot lady for years. And she's had, by the way, years earlier, she filed and I still have it, she filed a police report stating that Louis Ewing, you ever heard of Louis?
Yeah.
She stated that Louis Ewing stalked her and followed her in the Safeway and a couple other places. And she had a truck description and she had a license plate number. And so the cops, they took it pretty seriously. They ran, they checked it out, they investigated it, they ran the license plate number, and it belonged to some Asian guy in Boulder who had a Volkswagen, not a truck. So they said, well, this plate isn't on a truck, it's on a Volkswagen in Boulder. And she goes, well, he probably came here from Washington and then stole the truck, and then stole the plate, put the plate on the truck, followed and stalked me, and then put the plate back without the guy knowing about it, and then went back to Washington.
It happens all the time.
And so the cops are going, wait a minute, you mean he flew here from Washington to steal a truck, steal a plate off a Volkswagen in Boulder, stalk you, and then put the plate and the truck back without nobody noticing? She goes, yeah. Well, you think they'd have started figuring out that she ain't playing with a full deck at that point in time. But, here they got a police report saying that Louis Ewing stalked her and threatened her. And he hadn't been in the state of Washington. Last time he was in the state of Colorado was about 7 years ago, where he flew into the state, did a lecture at a hotel right by, not far from the airport. I think it was called the Airport Hotel. He did a lecture to a small group of people like 7 years ago, and then flew out the next day. Never actually left the airport vicinity. And that was, 7 years before she claimed that he was in town stalking her. So they've got all these crazy reports where she's made reports that, we did this, I did that, or I committed a crime somehow, and they've never been able to even cite me for anything. Well, we did have a case where she called, actually, she's really close with our next door neighbors. So the next door neighbors called, and they complained that we were littering in our own backyard because we had all these pots left over from our gardening. You buy pots with plants in them at the store, and you transplant them into your garden. Well, what do you do with the pots? Well, you throw them in a stack in your backyard. They're plastic, and maybe eventually you recycle them. Well, she filed a complaint that we were littering in our own backyard. This big fat code enforcement officer came and jumped on my 2 wooden gates, jumped on top of 2 6-foot-tall wooden gates, and took pictures of our backyard, and cited us a $250 fine for littering in our own backyard, which is a violation of the international code, by the way. And I said, well, gee, I'd like to see a copy of this international code. Well, we adopted it by reference. You can access it online. I said, great, show me where it was passed by any legislative body in this country, much less this state. I said, because here's the thing. You can't enforce any kind of code that isn't passed by a legislative body in this country or in this state. And it also has to be published, promulgated, and made available for public inspection with finding guides. That's the law. So show me where that was done. Oh, you could go online. I said, no, you don't seem to get it. Publication online isn't considered publication in law. That's virtual reality. So just because you put something online doesn't mean it's published. And here's another thing. The International Code is copyrighted. You can't publish it without committing copyright infringement. So I know for a fact you didn't publish it. And if you can't publish it, you can't enforce it. And I said, here's another thing. If I'm charging you with destruction to the code enforcement officer, I filed a criminal complaint against him for destruction of private property and criminal trespass. And I said, please show up at court with your pictures because we're going to use them as evidence against you. Well, they lost those pictures because he realized, oh shit, if I show up with pictures that are taken above, 3 or 4 feet above their 6-foot gate in their backyard, which all 4 hinges on both my gates were broken because the wooden gates aren't made to hold a 200-pound fat ass. And the cops, I filed the complaint. The cops said, oh, yeah, we don't see anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, really? You got pictures that he took on top of my 6-foot fence, which, here's the thing. Since when can code enforcement jump on top of your fence to take pictures when, according to the law, they can't leave, they can't trespass on your property to try to find code violations. They have to see it from the street, right?
Yeah.
So when I pointed out, you better, go ahead, please show up with your pictures that you took from the top of my gate, and I'll throw your ass in county jail because that's going to be my evidence. Well, they went inside the neighbor's house and took pictures over the fence through their window, so they didn't have to produce the pictures that he took. And then I pointed out, well, they wouldn't allow me in the hearing. They had 2 cops stand over me and basically wouldn't allow me outside of the hallway. And they had their little hearing for Dr. Glazer and found her guilty and fined her $250 for violating their international code for littering in our own backyard. And because they wouldn't let me in the hearing room, I couldn't point out the fact that those pictures that were taken through their neighbor's window is against Wheat Ridge Municipal Code, because Wheat Ridge Municipal Code says you can't take pictures over a 6-foot privacy fence in somebody's yard without violating the municipal code. That's a violation of privacy. And so we had police officers taking pictures over a 6-foot fence through a window in a neighbor's yard, or in a neighbor's house, actually. And then they fined us $250 for violating the international code. So, yeah, Wheat Ridge has had a special place in their heart for me.
So they got you on a violation of this protection order for scratching your nose with the wrong finger?
Right. And they said, well, what's funny is they charged me harassment and violation of the protection order. Well, the harassment statute says I have to make an obscene gesture. Do you know what an obscene gesture is, according to the statute?
I've made many of them myself, but what does the statute say?
The statute says it has to be a simulated sexual act. To be charged with harassment, you have to do a simulated sexual act. And the prosecutor said, well, flipping the bird is a simulated sexual act. I'm like, what? What act would that be exactly? Because I'm really confused. I know a little bit about sex, and I don't know any sexual act that looks like somebody flipping the bird.
Well, when you're talking to a public servant, it's like urinating in public is a sex offense in a lot of jurisdictions, and so I surmise that flipping the bird and urination is a part of every sexual encounter by a public servant.
Well, I said, dude, if you can look at your hand and see a simulated sexual act, you need help. And it's help I can't provide you. I said, you need some help because I don't see it. He goes, well, the 2 bent fingers next to the middle finger are legs, and the middle finger represents the penis. I said, in what world is that? I've never heard of that one, dude. And I said, here's the funny part. I've actually researched the flipping of the bird. I went and researched it. You know where it comes from? It comes from the Middle Ages. It comes from the English longbow. You ever heard of the English longbow? In England,
Yeah.
in the Middle Ages, they invented the longbow. Now, the longbow was made of yew wood, special tree that was extremely flexible and extremely strong. And they make these longbows out of yew wood, and it took a great amount of skill to shoot them because you had to be, strong, and you had to have real strong fingers. And shooting a longbow was called plucking the yew. That was the term for it. They said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to pluck the yew," which means I'm going to go shoot the longbow. Well, the French decided they were going to invade England, and they declared that they were going to cut off the middle finger of every Englishman so they couldn't shoot the English longbow, because the English longbow was kicking the shit out of the French. Because they had bows too, but their bows weren't an English longbow, and the English longbows were going a good 50 to 100 feet further than any French bow would. So the English could pelt you with arrows and kill your guys long before your French arrows could get anywhere near them. And that was pissing them off. So they declared they were going to cut off the middle finger of every Englishman they encountered, so they couldn't ever shoot the English longbow again. Well, the England kicked the shit out of the French because they had the English longbow. And they shot the hell out of them with their arrows before they could even get close. And so the Englishmen would stand on top of the ramparts of their castle walls, and they would show their middle finger to the French, and they would say, "See, I can still pluck you." And that's where it comes from. Plucking the yew. And eventually it turned into fuck you. That's where it came from. Now, how is that a simulated sexual act?
You'd have to ask the prosecutor.
Yeah, well, that's all they got. I'm going to ask him on the stand, at the trial. How does that constitute a simulated sexual act? And he can explain to the jury how showing your middle finger is a simulated sexual act. I'd love to hear that explanation. And again, I'm going to make that remark. If you can look at your hand and see a simulated sexual act, dude, you definitely need some kind of mental health. You need some mental health assistance.
So tell me about the judge in this protection order case.
Oh, well, originally the judge who issued it was a judge who the voters pamphlet several years put out on the voters pamphlet that this judge should not be retained because the victims of domestic violence feel more victimized by this judge than the people who actually victimized them. So they questioned people who went through that were victims of domestic violence that went through this lady's court. Her name was Judge Judy Archuleta. Judge Judy, that's what everybody called her. And she's the one that issued a protection order based strictly on a threat to sue. And evidently that wasn't the first one she'd issued. She issued many, many others based on lesser threats. And they suggested she not be retained because every victim of domestic violence that appeared in her court for help felt more victimized by her than they did the people that actually victimized them. So that was the first time I'd ever seen where the voters pamphlet stated that they should have retained that judge. And so she was voted out. She was not retained because of that. 8 years later, they got this new judge named Jean Woodford. She's been a judge, I think, for less than 2 years. She issues a warrant, or actually it was Thomas Vance, I think, issued a warrant for my arrest for violating the protection order because they had a picture of me scratching my nose with my middle finger. They said, oh, well, yeah. So the cop issued an affidavit, which, here's the funny part, not one affidavit in the state of Colorado that I've found has a jurat on it. Now, I'm betting that the Aurora Theater shooting, the guy who committed the murders at the Aurora Theater, how much you want to bet his affidavit has a jurat on it? I'm thinking it probably does, considering they did a grand jury indictment against him. So he's probably got a jurat on his affidavit, but not one affidavit in the whole state of Washington has a jurat. It's
Colorado.
Sworn in Colorado, excuse me, has a jurat. It says sworn before me on this day. That's what it says. It doesn't say I swear under penalties of perjury under the laws of the state of Colorado, and the foregoing is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. Now, when I brought this up to the judge, I said, this isn't a valid jurat. The warrant was never valid because the jurat used to get the warrant was never valid. It doesn't have a jurat. The affidavit of probable cause isn't an affidavit because it doesn't have a jurat. She goes, oh, we don't need that here in this state. I said, excuse me, ma'am, but the Supreme Court case from 1986 known as Briscoe versus LaHue gives police officers immunity from perjury. They're immune. So they can't not sign an affidavit under penalties of perjury. Because if you have an affidavit that doesn't have a jurat sworn under penalties of perjury, it's not a valid affidavit. And because of the case Briscoe versus LaHue, they can't not sign under penalties of perjury because they're immune from perjury. They have immunity under Briscoe versus LaHue. So show me how they cannot sign under penalties of perjury because why? Oh, because they're afraid they might get charged with perjury? They can't. They're immune. So this immunity granted to them under Briscoe versus LaHue makes it to where they cannot do an affidavit that doesn't have a jurat on it. She said, no, that's not the way it's done here. Denied. I filed 7 pleadings, including and when they arrested me, they told me that I had a $200 cash-only self-bail bond on me. So in the state of Colorado, they can tell you, they can say that only you can bail yourself out for, anywhere for up to $10,000 or more dollars. Cash only, self-bond. You know what that means? That means you can't come and bail me out. Nor can a bondsman. Only I can bail myself out with cash. Now, they have this thing called Article 2, Sections 19 and 20 of the Colorado State Constitution. And under those provisions in Colorado, it states that the state shall provide sufficient sureties, but may accept cash in lieu of bond, except for capital offenses. And to clarify that,
hang on, Kurt.
Sure.
That bail shall be available by sufficient sureties, which does not exclude bond, but they say that the only person that can bail somebody out is the person himself when he's sitting in jail.
Correct. So I had $200 cash only self-bail. Only I could bail myself out with $200 cash. For violating an 8-year-old protection order that, according to their statutes, is only good for 4 years. And they have to renew it, supposedly. But evidently, in Colorado, they think they can issue a civil protection order that's permanent without ever being, and I was never charged or convicted of anything. So what they did is they took my Second Amendment right by saying this guy has a protection order against him, and they invoked the Brady Bill, which they can't do unless there's a conviction or some kind of threat of violence or bodily harm or property damage. And she admitted the only threat I ever made to her was a threat to litigate. And so they came into my front door in March. They pushed the doctor who owns the house into the closet, and they took me into custody. Now, she has Parkinson's. So what they did was they committed criminal trespass and they assaulted an at-risk adult. Not just one, two. I'm also an at-risk adult. So they assaulted 2 at-risk adults. They then handcuffed me, stuck me in the back of the car, and then drove down the street about a half a block and parked there for an hour and a half and sat there with me handcuffed in the back seat of a hard plastic seat with my hands behind my back, which is, and I'm an in-home care hospice patient. I'm the only living case in medical history like me. My doctor says there's no medical reason I should be alive, but here I am. And I have 2 reasons to be dead. Not just the fact that I've got a cop that bifurcated my liver by kicking me in the liver, but I got a 4-centimeter, I got more than one, but I got a 4-centimeter hole in between my hepatic and my portal vein, plus several other holes in my chest caused by when the cops picked me up in Snohomish County. They stuck a billy club up underneath my rib cage and picked me up off the ground numerous times until I passed out. I think about 8 or 9 times, but I'm not, and evidently, while I was unconscious, they kicked me in the head. Now, I don't remember this, but since this incident, I've been diagnosed with trauma-induced glaucoma, which caused blindness in my right eye. And I've also been diagnosed with trauma-induced tinnitus. So I have inner ear damage caused by being kicked in the head. And I've got blindness in my eye because they kicked me evidently so hard that it knocked the pigment out of my eye. And the pigment clogged up the pores in my eye, causing chronic open-angle glaucoma.
Now, this was February 2nd, 2002, and the police did this because you were one of the first Washington State legal medical marijuana patients. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah, I was in when I got in an accident in '93. I suffered what was called cervical vertigo, and I crushed vertebrae and herniated discs in my neck, and damaged my atlas, my axis, and had several punctured lung. I had several broken ribs, and really messed up both my hands, both my wrists, and crushed my knee. You had a lot of problems. Spent a lot of time in the hospital. I had to learn how to walk all over again, and I spent some time in a wheelchair. But the accident, I probably shouldn't have lived through it. It was one of them situations. I was vomiting blood massively because of my internal injuries, and they didn't know what to do. So after, I think it was 3-4 weeks, they finally just said, your insurance, you don't have insurance, so we're going to have to kick you loose. So they left me out of the Portland hospital, and then some friends of mine came and got me on my motorcycle and drove me up to Seattle. And then I spent one night at my house, and then I ended up back in the hospital for about another month, I think it was. 3 weeks to a month. And I was in pretty bad shape. But I had to go through 3 years of vestibular therapy to learn to walk again. And physical therapy, occupational therapy, and it was kind of brutal, because I had lost my balance, and I had to retrain how to balance myself based strictly on my vision. So when I closed my eyes, I would fall over. So if I was in the dark, I was in really bad shape. But so my doctor, after trying every antiemetic known to man, which is anti-nausea medication, he realized that I couldn't stop throwing up. I was constantly throwing up, and he was like, he was in disbelief that I could throw up that much. And so he wasn't too sure about what the deal was. I'm a long-haired hippie. He's like, yeah, maybe this guy's just a hippie, wants some kind of drugs or something. Yeah, everybody wants anti-Nazi medication, right? So one day I go to his office and I'm waiting in the waiting room, and all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off and everybody has to leave because there's some kind of fire problem going on in the building. This is up in Capitol Hill. So everybody goes out in the parking lot, including me. Of course I'm sick, so I go behind these bushes and I'm puking my guts out behind these bushes. Well, the doctor, he comes out and he sees me behind these bushes puking my guts out, and he realizes this guy ain't just puking for my benefit. This guy's puking all the time. Because he knows he wasn't there to see me puking behind the bushes, and I wasn't in public in front of everybody. I was kind of hiding behind the bushes because, you don't want to be, puking in front of everybody. Doesn't go, people don't like it. Doesn't go on well. So I'm kind of trying to be discreet behind these bushes, puking and shit. And he realized, hey, man, you're really, really sick. And I'm like, thanks for pointing that out. So he decided, I'm going to try. He tried every kind of antiemetic known to man, and nothing worked. So finally, he tried Marinol. Well, Marinol is synthetic THC in a sesame oil suspension in a little teeny pill that's kind of like a ping pong ball. And so you can't split it in half because, try cutting a ping pong ball full of oil in half and splitting that. It's going to make a big mess. So I get on this Marinol, and he found out this is the only thing that stops you from throwing up, and it only works for a couple hours. Well, Marinol at that time was $1,800 for 90 pills, which was, he figured it took at least 120 pills for me to make it through a month. And he said, listen, I'm a surgeon and a doctor, and I cannot, there's no way I could afford to pay for 90 pills a month and pay all my bills. He said, I couldn't afford $2,000 a month. He says, and I don't see how you can either. He says, but you got to stay alive. We can't let you die just because you can't hold down any food. He says, if you don't stop throwing up, you're going to die. You got to be able to hold down fluids, you got to hold down food, otherwise you get dehydrated and you die. So he says, I'm going to write you a prescription for marijuana. I said, I don't think you can do that. He said, I'm one of the few doctors in this country that can write a prescription for a Schedule I drug. So he wrote me a prescription on a pad for medical marijuana. And that was in 94. My accident was 93. Well, in 97, I got charged with possession of marijuana in Shoreline, Washington. And I had my doctor write a letter and send it to the prosecutor. And I had a public defender that I had him give me at the time. And my public defender wrote a letter to me and to the judge and thanked him. And to my doctor, wrote a letter to the doctor and thanked him, saying, thank you so much for taking the effort to write this letter in behalf of your patient. And because of your letter, you've saved several, numerous hours of court time and court costs. And, we are able to establish that Mr. Riggin is legal to use marijuana in the state of Washington because of his medical need for it. And that since it's the only medication that works, it does more benefit than it does harm. We're going to dismiss all the charges against him. And I still have that letter. I used to carry, I laminated it. I shrunk it down, laminated it, and carried it in my wallet with me. Because I had to pull it out lots of times. And so 97, I beat a medical marijuana charge at Shoreline, or a marijuana charge at Shoreline based on medical necessity. That was before there was any state law that allowed for medical marijuana. And that's when I decided, I'm getting tired of being harassed for having pot when I have a legal right to have it in the state under the ultimate user statute for the state of Washington. If you go to the RCWs and you do a word search for ultimate user, you'll find a statute that pre-exists any state medical marijuana law, and it's in every state. You can find it in every state statute. If you do a word search for ultimate user, every state has an ultimate user exemption, which says if you have a doctor's recommendation to use a controlled substance, like heroin, marijuana, or LSD, which are all Schedule I drugs, that you have a legal right to possess it. Well, they really didn't cotton to that. They didn't like that at all. And I would constantly have police officers driving by my house flipping me the bird in broad daylight. Now, most people I know don't have police officers so mad that they drive by flipping them off. Now, I did file a few complaints against some officers, and I think I probably got a few officers fired because they violated state law. And most cops aren't smart enough to know the law, so they violate it all the time. But most, since people aren't aware that that's a law violation, and they don't know that they can file a formal complaint against the cop, they don't. So most cops get away with criminal law. They get away with committing crimes daily. And most complaints against cops go unheard. They go, oh, it's an unfounded complaint, or denied. Okay. And like I say, in this state, there's cops that have shot and killed, guys in bed, and they never got so much as a reprimand, Oh, they got a 6-month suspension with pay, or 3-month suspension with pay, but nobody gets fired. Nobody gets prosecuted that wears a badge that commits a murder. As a matter of fact, recently, they just had a case where a Weld County sheriff was living in a town called Erie, Colorado. He shot his wife point blank in the head. And then when the police arrived, when the Erie police arrived, they knew he was a Weld County sheriff. And he admitted to them, I murdered her. I shot her in the head. The cops declared it a suicide and let him go.
So
now
that would be a suicide by nagging.
Yeah, she shot herself in the head. He said. Yeah.
No, I had to put her out of my misery because she just nags too much.
Exactly. Well, when they questioned him, he had scratches all over his body. He had scratches all over him. His chest, his arms, everywhere. And they questioned him, they let him go. They said, oh, it's a suicide. Well, the parents of this lady, and by the way, she had 2 or 3 kids that he took and moved to Iowa right after this incident. So the parents of this lady, they've been trying to get justice for years. It's never happened. Well, finally, they get this guy from Channel 7, I think, News, or Fox 31 News. They got a news reporter interested in a story, and he starts questioning neighbors. Well, he questions the next-door neighbor, and the next-door neighbor said, the guy confessed in front of my window. I heard him tell the police officer that he shot her in the head, that he murdered his wife. He says, and I assumed that he got prosecuted for it. I never, he says, I never heard anything about it afterwards. I didn't know that they declared it a suicide and let him go. He said, how could they do that when he confessed to the police officer that he shot her in the head? So the guy up and moved to Iowa and lived there for 3 years. And finally, this reporter got the case reopened because he had this neighbor that heard him confess, brought that forward, which caused a grand jury indictment. First it caused they did an autopsy on her, and they found his DNA under her fingernails. And he said he said that that he'd scratched himself. He said, yeah, I was scratching myself. That's how I got these scratches. You know, you itch, you scratch. That's how you get the scratches. Well, they found his DNA under her fingernails. So it wasn't him scratching himself. It was her scratching him in defense before he shot her in the head. So then they got a grand jury indictment, and he is the first cop I think they've ever extradited. So now they've extradited him here to Colorado, and now they're trying him for murdering his wife. Now, that don't happen very often. Here's a guy, now here's what really gets me. The cop he confessed to doesn't remember anything about it. And he isn't being charged with accessory after the fact to murder. Wow. Now, where I come from, the asshole that gets him off for 3 years, lets him get away with murder for 3 years, is an accessory after the fact. But they ain't done that yet. I don't think they ever will. So that proves to you a police officer can get away with murder in the state of Colorado. Murder. And his fellow police officer can get away with accessory after the fact for covering up that murder. That's business as usual here in Colorado. So beware. When you come to Colorado, yeah, it's the Wild West. They play it a little fast and loose when it comes to law around here.
I'm going to... Go ahead, finish up.
I said they'll arrest you and they'll jail you for not having insurance, but yet, they're doing it on a law that's been repealed for 10 years or more.
While they get away with murder.
While they get away with murder.
I'm going to recount very quickly what you told me about the case in Everett, Washington from 2002, where because you were doing what the law permits, you had marijuana plants, you were a prescribed medical marijuana patient, and the Everett police and the Snohomish County Sheriffs showed up at your house February 2nd, 2002. You had to walk with a cane. They pushed you down and dragged you around your house by the hair, broke into your safe, stole $20,000 or $30,000 worth of gems and precious metals. You used to be a jeweler, and they cut the power cord. More like 100, 250, 300,000 or more. Oh, okay.
I had some gems that had appraisals from the 80s for $30,000 and $40,000. So I had a ruby and a sapphire. The ruby was worth $40,000 with an 84 appraisal, and the sapphire was worth $37,000 with an 84 appraisal. And those disappeared. I had 47 to 48 ounces of gold coins, not just gold coins, which have numismatic value above and beyond the gold value. I had 17 ounces of platinum bars. I had blue and red diamonds. I had, I taught lost wax casting and bright cut diamond setting since the 70s, and for several years, and so I had a sizable collection, and I was a jeweler since the time I was in high school. I went to diamond setting school 5 days after I graduated high school in 1977, and graduated with honors, and from the Racecraft School of Diamond Setting. So I was a very good jeweler by the time I was, within a year after I was out of high school, and I was working as a jeweler for a place called International Jewelers, making 6 figures a year, doing really well. And I didn't start out there, but I eventually worked up to that. But I was doing, making good money, and I was doing real well.
Okay, but, so the cops broke into your safe, stole all that. They cut the power cord off of all your appliances, poured coffee on a silk tuxedo from Taiwan, took a car key.
They didn't just pour coffee on it. they threw my suits onto my bed and they urinated on them. Suit, bed, bedding. They urinated all over my house. I found 28 grande coffee cups in my house and 18 in my garage. So they had themselves a coffee party, and they pissed all over. I mean, they pissed on my clothes, they pissed on my bed, they pissed in my grow buckets. You know, they had a great time. And what they didn't steal, they destroyed.
Okay, they cut the power cord off of your appliances, destroyed all your grow equipment, took a sharp object of some nature, like a car key or whatever, and scratched rifles from the tip of the barrel through the length of the stock, decreasing the value. Didn't they steal a couple guns also?
Yeah, they bent all the sights on all the guns. So they damaged all my guns, and I had I had over 100 guns. I had a big collection of guns. I had some guns that were, you know, from family members and that had fought in World War II and in Korea and in Vietnam, and I had a large collection of military weapons. I had a large collection of guns, and I owned, you know, I had an interest in at that time I had an interest in a gun business with a friend of mine. I was kind of a silent partner, and I also had I was part owner in a antique refinishing place in Edmonds, and we specialized in refinishing Steinway pianos. So we made pretty good money, and I had a lot. Plus, I had an espresso stand on Broadway in the parking lot of the Baskin Robbins, and all that equipment was paid for by me. The little building I had was all paid for and built by me and everything, and I was making pretty good money. We were making about $600 a day after everything was paid out, and just off the coffee shop. And sometimes on the weekends I'd make as much as $2,000. People went nuts over espresso, especially back in those days. It was, just kind of catching on. Starbucks was just getting going, and I lost everything. I had to. Basically, I had to leave the state to avoid getting killed.
So back to the 2002 encounter, they cut the power cords on all your appliances. They all your legal papers of your.
Let's get to the part where they came in with a warrant that was signed. They came in the door with a district court warrant. But the problem with that is it wasn't signed by a district court judge.
Yeah, hang on. That's the legal side of things. I want to get to the property damage and the assault. They took...
When they came in the door, they had 4 officers bust through the door, and I had right behind me was my safe. When you came in the front door, the first thing in front of you was the safe because you couldn't get it past the front door hardly. So I had it sitting there, and the TV was sitting on top of the safe. And they basically tackled me and up against my safe, and my safe broke at least 7 or 8 ribs. When you got 4 200-plus pound guys, tackling you into a safe, the safe doesn't give, but your ribs will.
Yeah, I remember your safe was like a 30-inch square steel block with sharp edges.
A little bigger than that. It was about 4 to 4.5 feet tall, 4.5 feet square, and yeah, it was a big, thick. It had a 1/2-inch steel plate door, and they hired a safe guy, and he billed them 4.5 hours. And what he did is he drilled through the handle of the safe and dismantled the door on the inside. Had a brass handle, and he drilled right through that handle. And So when I got home, there was no handle on one of the doors, and the door was dismantled from the inside. And here's what they put on their police report. They said they found a piece of paper in my wallet with the safe combination on it, and they used that to open the safe. Well, if you find a piece of paper in my wallet, which I never wrote down the combination of that safe because I have a photographic memory, and I've never had to write down the number of any safe combination I've ever had. So if you have a combination to the safe, why would you have to pay somebody 4.5 hours to open that safe with the combination? A safe specialist. I'm pretty sure a safe specialist can open up a safe with a combination in less than 4.5 hours.
Right. So they took you out in the front yard and assaulted you, and this was at least several police from the Everett police station and several Snohomish County Sheriff's deputies. Then after assaulting you, breaking your ribs and separating cartilage between your ribs and whatnot, they put you in the back of a patrol car, handcuffed, and drove you up.
They pulled a whole lot of hair out of my head, too. The way they hauled me around was by my hair.
Yeah, and drove you up and down bumpy alleys at a high rate of speed to aggravate your injuries. They got you to the jail, and the jailer said, "We're not letting him in here until he's been to the emergency room."
Well, let's give the timeline. They hauled me out of the house at 7 o'clock at night, and I had 2 witnesses to that effect. They got me in front of my fence, and that's when they stuck a billy club up underneath my rib cage and picked me up off the ground about 7 or 8 times until I passed out. Now, I came to inside the car. I don't know how I got there. And at that point in time, they had this stereo cranked up, so that I couldn't, trying to keep me from hearing them talking. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love country music. So they put on, first it was rock and roll. I said, oh, this is great, I love this music. So then they put it on country. I said, oh, this is I like country even better. I'm from Montana, So they kept getting pissed, and finally they put it on scan. So it just go on one station for a few minutes, and then go to another, and then another. And they had it cranked up real loud. And yeah, they had me cranked up with my hands, not just cuffed the way they normally handcuff you. They had my hands where my elbows were together behind my back. So, imagine cuffing you with your hands cranked and your elbows, put together behind your back to where they're touching. And they carried me around by my hair. They stood on my ankles. We had a 200-pound officer standing on your ankles, your knees, and my elbows while I was shackled onto the floor. I had 2 fat cops. One of them was, God, what was his name? I don't remember. What's that? Yeah,
Porky.
I almost, it's been so many years, it's hard to remember, but I had one cop in particular that was kept standing on my joints, and he was a 200-plus pound officer. Try laying on the ground and have somebody stand on your knee or your ankle or your elbow sometime and bounce up and down with their boot. Really feels good. They did the billy club thing. Oh yeah, they did. While I was shackled on the ground, they had me on a concrete floor. They did knee drops on my back, and they broke every rib I had connected to my spine. The short ribs connected to your spine, they broke every one of mine doing knee drops on my back. They arrested me at 7 o'clock and drugged me out of my house at 7 o'clock. I didn't make it till the jail in front of that jailer until 1:30 in the morning.
And he said you had to go to the emergency room?
He said, I'm not booking this guy. There's no way I'm going to take a picture of this guy. And there's no way I'm going to book him until you take him to the emergency room, because I'm not going to be responsible for him. And they were pissed. I mean, they were really pissed about that. He says, listen, this guy's got his own blood all over him. He says, I'm not going to let you take him, and I'm not taking a picture of him. I'm not going to let, he says, that's going to be evidence against you guys and against us. I'm not going for that. You're going to have to give him a shower. So they stripped me naked, and they made me stand in an ice-cold shower. And that was probably, I think it was like 1:30, 2 o'clock when that, I got there at 1:30, so it was probably around 2 when they threw me in the shower.
That was before the emergency room?
Yeah. That was before the emergency room. They kept me in that shower. You remember I told you that? I told you about the shower, didn't I?
Yeah.
But they kept me in an ice-cold shower, I think to probably try to cover up the bruises, And they stood over me with two guys stood over me with billy clubs while I stood in the shower, and then I couldn't stand anymore. And they made me squat in that shower. And so I had to sit on the shower floor and in ice-cold water by the time they let me out, the sun was up. So they threw me in the shower around 2 o'clock. I don't know when the sun came up around that time of the day, but it probably at least 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning by that time. And at that time I was so cold. I was just so chilled. I couldn't get warm. Nothing I could do to get warm. I was chilled to the bone. Then they took me to the hospital. And they wouldn't allow me to see a doctor. And what they did is they put me in a waiting room, not an exam room, a waiting room. Like I think it was like a victim's, where they meet people whose family members dying, and they consult with them. That's the kind of waiting room they stuck me in. And so they bring an intern in there, and he looks at me and he goes, "This guy's pretty bad. He looks like he's hurt really bad." And he said, "This wrist is obviously broken." Oh yeah, I forgot. They put the handcuffs on me as tight as they could get them. They then take me out in front of the house. They put me up against a SUV they had, and they smacked each one of my handcuffs with a mag light, thereby causing a crush fracture in both of my wrists. I told you that, didn't I?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had crush fractures in both of my wrists, and by the time I got to the jail, my hands were so swollen that my fingers were as far apart as I could get them, and they were all touching. So, my hands were just they were bad. I mean, the jailer freaked out when he saw my hands. It's like, oh God, you get those cuffs off him right now. They started yelling and shit. They got the cuffs off me. And they put them on real loose after that. I could almost slip my hands out, but I knew better to do that. And, then eventually they took me to the hospital. Well, the cop said, "Listen, we got time for one x-ray. Pick what you want x-ray." And the guy goes, "Both of his wrists are pretty bad off. I think we're going to have to x-ray both of them." He goes, "You get one x-ray. Take your pick." So he said, "Well, which one?" I said, "Well, the left one's really bad, dude. I can't stand the pain. I need something for pain." He says, "We can't give anything for pain, but, I'll x-ray it." So what does he do? He x-rays my right wrist. And he said, "Oh, shit, I made a mistake." The cop's standing right there. He goes, I did the wrong wrist. We're going to have to do the other wrist." He goes, "We don't have time for that shit." He goes, "This is my room. You need to get out of here." He said, "This is my x-ray room. You got no business being here." He's not going anywhere. Get the hell out of the door. So he kicked him out. And he said, "We're going to do both your wrists." And he took x-rays of both wrists. So I have proof that I have crush fractures of both my wrists by medical records. So then he gives me splints to put on both wrists. And the first thing the cop did was pull the metal bars out of the splints, which actually made them effective. which made them work. They have these little metal bars that are in the splints. Oh yeah, you can't have these. So he pulled this splint, the thing that actually makes the splint work, pulled those out. So there you go. And then took me back to the jail. Well, they had me with these handcuffs with the broken wrists, with a hard plastic seat, handcuffed behind my back, and yeah, they drove me down alleyways. They drove me along the railroad tracks next to the river, through some rough-ass gravel roads, just to have some fun, just to hear me in agony. I was screaming from the pain because I got 2 broken wrists and bouncing around in the back of a hard plastic seat with my.
And the driver was a female Snohomish County Sheriff's deputy.
Yep. And she watched him stick the billy club up underneath my rib cage and laughed when they did it. She got a big kick out of that.
That bitch.
Yeah, real piece of work, her. And then, so I get to, they take me to the hospital, they x-ray, they put the splints on my wrists, they send me back to the jail. The next day, next morning.
Didn't they send you back to the jail with meds?
Yeah, they sent me back to the jail with meds, but they refused to give me any meds. I think they gave me an aspirin. And so they refused the meds. Then the next morning when they opened the door of the cell, the guy goes, "Holy shit, this guy's still alive." Oh, also, while they were doing knee drops on my back, they kept kicking me in the right-hand side.
Just a second, Kurt. Just a second. There was a beep on your phone like you got an incoming call. They opened the door and said this guy is still what?
This guy's still alive. They said, this guy's still breathing. And all the cops came over and looked into the cell. Wow, this guy's still alive? They were shocked that I was alive the next day. But yeah, when they had me shackled on the ground and they were doing knee drops on my back, breaking my ribs, they also were kicking me in the side. Well, what they did was they kicked me in the liver multiple times and fractured my liver in 2 pieces. And I'm the only case in medical history with a bifurcated liver that wasn't found by autopsy, post-mortem, according to my surgeon. He did the research, and he said there's a lot of cases out there with bifurcated livers, and oddly enough, a large number of them were in police custody before this happened. So he said, I think a lot of them are police-caused fractured livers. But he said every one of them was found post-mortem. I'm the only case in medical history that has a bifurcated liver, and I'm still alive.
Out of 1,800?
Out of, 1,780 cases he researched. And so, I'm his miracle patient. But they evidently didn't expect me to live, because the next morning when they opened the cell door, the guy was, this guy's still breathing. And the guys, what? Is he still alive? And they came in there and looked. Holy shit, he's still alive. I'm like, no thanks to you, assholes. So I think everybody who, when that guy kicked me, the last time he kicked me in the liver, he knew he did something because he freaked out. It freaked him out. He goes, oh, God. Oh, shit. And he stopped kicking me. So he felt something give when he kicked me in the liver that last time. And it freaked him out. It's kind of like when you break somebody's bone. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you had to defend yourself and you've broken somebody's bone. It's something you don't ever forget. It's something that sticks in your memory for the rest of your days. You just caused somebody injury, broke their bone.
The head sheriff for Snohomish County at that time was Richard Bart. He was a former DEA. Was it for 15 years?
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I understand.
And how
And
many
here's where
ever...
the interesting part. They
Go ahead.
came in the door. Oh, they came in the door with a warrant, a district court warrant. But the problem was it was signed by a municipal court judge from Edmonds, which is not the town I was living in. I lived in Everett. And Edmonds isn't even connected to Everett. It's another town over. It's in, I think it might even be in a different county. No, I guess it is Snohomish County. But they tried, and here's what I found out. The sheriffs went to 2 or 3 different Superior Court judges in Snohomish County with an affidavit of probable cause to attempt to get a warrant to search my house. And the judges both said, wait a minute, you want to search Kurt Riggin, a tribal attorney for the Tulalip, Puyallup, and the Muckleshoot tribes? You want to search his house? You want us to issue a search warrant for his house based on a smell? An officer smelled growing marijuana plants while driving down the road at 30 miles an hour at 3 o'clock in the morning in 30-degree weather? No way. They wouldn't do it. They couldn't get a Superior Court judge to sign the warrant. They tried 2 or 3 different district court judges, and they wouldn't sign the warrant either. So then they went over to the municipal court in Edmonds, and they got Judge James White to sign the warrant as a district court judge. He never was. He was a municipal court judge from Edmonds. He was never a district court judge.
A city judge, not a county district court judge.
Exactly. And not the city I lived in. If he'd have been an Everett judge, he could have signed a municipal court warrant, which I think they can do, which would have been in his jurisdiction. But he was from Edmonds, so he had no jurisdiction beyond the city limits of Edmonds.
Now,
So he's
tell me the names of all the police officers and sheriffs that were reprimanded and fired over this.
I don't even remember their names. It's been so long, and I ain't doing too good as far as that goes. I used to remember all their names.
Were there any reprimands?
Yeah. It took a while though. It took a couple years almost. But what happened is they stole a shitload of my guns. And they stole all my paperwork, all my receipts for my guns, which I never got back. But they left the boxes behind. The guns all came in, they were all new. They came in boxes. And so they left the boxes behind. Well, guess what's on the boxes?
Fingerprints.
Serial numbers.
Oh.
So I took the serial numbers off the boxes and I filed a complaint with the ATF and reported those guns stolen. Even though the sheriff's office in Snohomish County refused to accept any stolen gun reports from me because they said, we know who you think stole them. I said, you mean you know who I know stole them? So they wouldn't take any stolen gun reports from me in Snohomish County. And so I went and filed a complaint with the ATF. And from what I understand, 2 years later, Snohomish County Sheriff was at the Puyallup gun show selling some guns at his little booth. A friend of mine had a booth 3 booths down. A guy by the name of Doug stopped. Doug said he knows a lot of these ATF agents because he was doing gunsmith work and he did some work for a couple of them. So he knew quite a few of them. He said he noticed there was 5 of them around this guy's table. And he said they kind of looked like they were getting ready to spring, like they were getting ready to jump. And he said the guy sold this ATF agent 2 guns. And he showed him his badge from I'm a Snohomish County Sheriff. Oh, cool. Yeah, they were impressed. He showed him his badge. Sold him these 2 guns, and when the guy filled out the paperwork and handed him the receipt, the ATF agent grabbed the receipt in one hand and reached over with his cuffs and slapped him on the wrist of the sheriff's deputy with the other. And said, "You're under arrest for possession and sale of stolen guns." It's a 5-year mandatory minimum. 5 years mandatory minimum per stolen gun. He just sold him 2. And Doug said the guy curled up in a fetal position and started bawling like a baby, and it took 5 ATF agents to carry him out of the gun show.
You never told me this.
Yeah, it wasn't until 2 years after the fact. So he went to jail for possessing 2 of my stolen guns. And from what I understand, that caused an investigation that caused several other officers to go down, because they then obtained information from him. They then searched some other police officers' homes and found more of my guns. So from what I understand, several police officers went to jail over my case.
But it wasn't for the fact that their superiors knew what they did. It was because of pressure from outside.
It was because the ATF busted them with stolen guns. That's why. And here's what's funny. 4 members from the drug task force had regular accounts with like 3 or 4 different pawn shops where they were selling anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 worth of jewelry a week to these pawn shops. Now, where do drug task force guys get $1,500 to $3,000 in jewelry a week?
From
Where they
Kurt
just
Riggin's
find it?
safe. Yeah.
From my safe and from any other drug dealer they bust. Anybody else they busted, evidently they had a regular thing going where they were picking up whatever jewelry they found at any drug bust and then taking it over and selling it. You know, who's going to report them? And who's going to prosecute them? Who's going to investigate? Oh, they're buddies.
Yeah. So this was February 2nd, 2002. What did they do on the 31st of December of 2002?
Let's see, what did they do?
Didn't one of the prosecutors leave the job? They got a new one?
Oh, yeah, that's right. They had an election, and they had a new prosecutor coming into the Snohomish County Court. Now, that's... no, see, that one was the second time they came in May. That's when that was. The first one, I pointed out to him that Judge James White wasn't legally a judge. What I did is I went down and I went down to the South District Court for Snohomish, and I demanded a copy of Judge White's oath of office. And the clerk said, "There's no Judge White here. We've never had a Judge White." I said, "Great, I need that in writing." So she gave me a letter saying, "We've never had a Judge White in Snohomish County, South District Court." And I took that and brought it to the attention of the prosecuting attorneys. I said, "You have a warrant signed by a guy who's never been a district court judge," and I got proof from the district court clerk. They dismissed that case within 2 days of me getting released. So I was in jail for 4 days, I think it was. And then 2 or 3 days after that is when they dismissed the case, because I proved that the guy wasn't the warrant was never any good on its face because the guy who signed it wasn't legally a district court judge. And I said, I want him charged with impersonating a public official, fraud, forgery, perjury, impersonating an officer under color of law. And I filed a complaint against him. And based on my complaint, the police, not the police, but the FBI, went to his judge's chambers with a warrant. And they went and searched his judge's chambers. Well, in Judge White's judge's chambers, they found a bag with $100,000 in cash. And $37,000 of that $100,000 was marked money from the DEA. That's kind of hard to explain. And come to find out, God, what was his name? An attorney, Jeff Steinborn, I think later confessed to giving him that money as a bribe to get the case thrown out. So Judge James White got 3 years in prison because he pled guilty to money laundering. Because I charged him with fraud, forgery, perjury, impersonating a public official, impersonating an officer under color of law, official misconduct, malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance of office, criminal profiteering, racketeering, organized crime, and money laundering. And they said, listen, we can't not look the other way with this $100,000 and $37,000 in marked money that was stolen from us several years ago. So evidently, a few years earlier, a guy had some informant for the DEA had $125,000 in cash of marked money from the DEA. They were sitting outside this warehouse in Seattle, and they let him walk into this warehouse with this suitcase full of $125,000. And they waited outside for like a couple hours. And finally, they raided, and they got 2 pounds of heroin, 2 pounds of cocaine, and about $50,000. But their $125,000 and the guy were gone. And what he did was he opened up a grate, went down into the basement, and walked along a steam pipe for like 6 blocks underground, and came up on First Avenue in Seattle through an elevator that comes up onto the sidewalk from the underground, hopped a bus, and then took a plane somewhere. But it's somewhere along the line, somebody got $37,000 of that $125,000 before he split, and it ended up in the judge's chambers in his bag. So here he ripped off the DEA for $125,000, and over 30 of it shows up in the judge's chambers in his bag. So yeah.
Back to your story. You got assaulted. You should have died, and they cut the power cords off your appliances and trashed your house and stole all that jewelry and precious metals, and you're free to go.
Yeah, and then, and they also said I had 166 plants, and I had 20 pounds of manicured marijuana ready to go. Well, they couldn't, They did take all my plants, but oddly enough, I only had 78 pots. So what they did was they pulled lower branches off the plants and said, hey, look at this. This is a plant all unto itself. So out of 78 pots, they got 166 plants. Well, the problem with that is their estimated value of those plants was $10,000 a plant. So in my lawsuit, I actually sued them. And I had Marius Starcheski for a lawyer. And then I had to leave. The U.S. Marshals said, you got 48 hours to get the hell out of the state, or they're going to kill you. They had evidently been listening in on Snohomish County sheriffs, and they had a plan that they were going to kill me. He said they're going to pull you over. The guy, they had a tape recording of 2 cops talking, one from another county, I guess, and one of them was like, one of the head cheeses of Snohomish County, and he was saying, yeah, we're going to pull him over. He says, I'm going to put 4 40 caliber pills in the back of his head, and then I'll take that 22 we got out of his office, and I'll pop a couple of rounds while it's in his hand through the back window. You'll be the investigator, and it'll be a clean shoot. They had a recording of these guys talking. I said, what are you guys going to do about it? He goes, we're doing it, Mr. Riggin. That's your bulletproof vest, and I suggest you get the hell out of this. What? Yeah, he says, I said, what the hell? He gives me this big plastic package and this is in a restaurant off Aurora. It was like a 50s diner that he met me in. He hands me this big this big black plastic package. I go, what the hell is this? He goes, that's your second chance, Mr. Riggin. Open it up. So I tore open the plastic, and here's a Kevlar vest, name brand, second chance. I said, what is this, a joke? He goes, we don't give away $1,000 jokes, Mr. Riggin. I suggest you live in that thing. So here's a U.S. Marshal giving me a bulletproof vest, telling me I got 48 hours to get the hell out of the state as a favor. He says, I'm doing this as a favor to you. I don't have to do this. He says, but these guys are going to kill you. He says, and we don't want to
investigate you. Hang on. Wouldn't it have been a bigger favor if he arrested those officers for conspiracy against rights, 10 years in prison?
That would have been my theory. But that wasn't their intention. They said, oh, well, we have an investigation, and it takes a while to go forward with this investigation. Well, they didn't arrest anybody until 2 years after I left the state.
That's great.
2 years of investigating, finally they started arresting them. But, so yeah, I've caused some problems with public officials going to prison over this, based on my complaints. And they gutted my house. I mean, what they didn't destroy, they stole. Including gems, gold. Oh yeah, they had a moving truck back into my driveway, and they loaded that moving truck up. What I got back fit in the back of a 2-door Datsun. Everything I got back fit in the back seat of a 2-door Datsun. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't, a whole lot of stuff they couldn't find that I didn't get back. A lot of guns, a lot of other valuables, gold. And I know every one of those cops that showed up at my house had a gold coin in his pocket that came out of my safe. Maybe even a platinum bar or two. But, I was a jeweler for years. I taught jewelry making at Pratt Fine Arts Center. And I had a large collection of extremely valuable gems, gold, platinum. I mean, I had accumulated a lot of stuff over the years, plus a lot of jewelry that I'd made that, I had in boxes and stuff to sell. Well, all of it disappeared.
So they really are Washington's finest.
Oh, yeah, they really are. and the funny part about it is they had these task force guys that had regular accounts. So when they finally nailed them, they realized, hey, these guys were selling, $1,500 to $2,000 or $3,000 in jewelry a week to these pawn shops. Well, where the fuck does a cop who's on the drug task force get that much jewelry every week? Well, you think he's making it? Well, no. Every drug bust he gets, everybody's got jewelry laying around their house. And if they got 2-3 days to dig through your house, there ain't much that you're going to miss, So, yeah, they took antiques. I had, all kinds of cool antiques. I had the first giveaway Anheuser-Busch ever gave away. And evidently, I found out it was worth thousands of dollars. It was a little brass Anheuser-Busch beer bottle that if you that unscrewed in the middle, and then it had a corkscrew that came out and then screwed back together, so the bottle was the handle of a corkscrew. Well, when they gave those away, that's how you opened a beer.
With a corkscrew.
With a corkscrew. That was a giveaway back in the 1800s for bar owners. Here's a corkscrew. If you carry our beer, we'll give you this brass corkscrew that you can use to open the bottles with. I had one of those. Worth thousands. Found it in the basement of the Phoenix Underground, which was an old bar back in the 1800s. 6th and James, I think is where it was. A friend of mine, he bought that bar, and I was helping him clean out the basement, and I found that little thing in the basement. He goes, oh, you can have that. And come to find out that was the first giveaway ever by Anheuser-Busch, and there's only a couple of them known to exist. Worth a lot of money. So, yeah, what they didn't destroy, they stole. And they, I should have died. I mean, when they stuck a billy club up underneath my rib cage and picked me up off the ground, it caused a 4-centimeter hole between my hepatic and my portal vein, thereby causing a massive amount of internal bleeding. When they kicked me in the liver multiple times, they fractured it in 2 pieces, thereby causing a 80% chunk of my liver to bifurcate and separate from a 20% piece of my liver, and all my blood was going through a 20% piece of my liver. So the only thing that was keeping me alive was a chunk of liver about 20% of what it normally is. So here I was bleeding internally, and I survived. For some reason, not sure exactly why, but medically they can't figure out why I'm still alive. Because right now, according to my surgeon, I should be dead. So there's absolutely no medical reason you should be alive, because you've got a bifurcated liver. Nobody's ever survived that, and you got this 4-centimeter hole. Well, they had to stick a plug in my chest to plug up the biggest hole. There's still several others, but the biggest one was 4 centimeters, which is about the size of a silver dollar. So imagine a hole in the middle of your chest between your hepatic and your portal vein that causes mass internal bleeding. And it actually blew up my hepatic, or my portal vein. Your hepatic vein comes right off your heart, so there's a lot of pressure there. And your portal vein comes up from your liver and across your chest. So when I got a hole between those two, what it did is it blew up my portal vein to about 5 or 6 or 7 centimeters around. So this is a vein that's normally 20 millimeters, 10 millimeters. That got blown to 4 centimeters or more, 4, 5, 6, 7 centimeters. It was huge. And it went all the way across my chest. So I kept having this feeling like I got a big ice ball in the middle of my chest, and I was really sick. And I started turning gray. My eyes started turning gray. I started suffering. I started suffering from liver failure. I was dying of liver failure. I couldn't think. I was having a really tough time. And they would do tests on me, and my liver test would come back normal because I still had an 80% piece of my liver that was functioning normally. But no blood was going through it. All the blood was going around it. And so they were like, oh, well, your liver functions are normal. Well, when they started doing a little more, serious testing, they realized, oh, shit, this guy's got a bifurcated liver, and he's got a hole in the middle of his chest about 4 centimeters that's causing a mass amount of blood loss and blowing up a vein in my chest. He said if somebody would have punched you in your chest or punched you in the stomach, even if you were scrubbed and in a surgical room ready to go for surgery, nobody could have saved you. You would have bled out in less than a minute because you had this large amount of blood in a vein that it didn't belong in under mass amount of pressure. He says, and they can't figure out why it didn't die. So yeah, I guess no wonder they were surprised the next morning when they opened the cell door and I was still breathing.
Well, it's lucky you got out of Washington and into Colorado where you're safe. Tell me about the pancreatic cancer patient out in the woods.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a friend of mine come up to me and he said, "Hey, this guy, I know he's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He lives out in Bailey, and the cops keep coming up to his house every week. There's a cop that lives on the other side of him. He lives kind of up in the woods." And there's a cop that had to drive by his house every week to go to his home. And so, every day. And so, once a week, he would stop at this guy's house, come to his front door and say, well, I know you're a medical marijuana patient, so therefore I have the right to search your house anytime I want, so I'm coming in. Well, the guy's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He's on oxygen. He ain't in any kind of condition to put up much of an argument. So the cop would come in there and dick with him, tear his house apart, make a big mess, pull his drawers out, empty them, kick the shit around the floor, just being a dick, And he goes, well, I guess I'll see you later, and didn't go. I need to see your plants. Have him show his plants a bunch of times and all this shit, just causing problems. And so my friend said, hey, I was wondering if you can help me, maybe file a complaint, get these cops to leave him alone. I said, yeah, what the hell? I stopped at the Safeway and I bought me a bag of donuts because I hadn't had anything to eat that morning. I wanted to eat something, so I bought a bag of donuts. I had like 6 donuts in a bag. So we take off. I got my bag of donuts. We go up to the Bailey substation there for the Snohomish County Sheriff, the Park County Sheriff's Office. And I go in there with my bag, and the cop goes, "What do you got in the bag?" I said, "Cob cakes. You want one?" "Cob cakes? What the hell's that?" I go, "It's a donut." He goes, "You think that's funny?" I said, "Well, I think it's chocolate glaze, but, I didn't want to eat one in front of you and being polite, so I brought extras so you guys could eat one too." He goes, "I don't want your damn donut." I said, "All right, well, I'm here to file a complaint against Officer Hannigan because he keeps harassing my friend who's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he's going up there searching his house and causing him all these problems, and he doesn't have any legal right to do that, and I want it stopped." And so I filed the complaint. He tape recorded the whole thing, which is about 20-minute conversation. And 17 minutes of it was my friend Tim Tipton, who was, who knew the guy better and basically, filed the complaint. I only talked for 3 minutes. And he says, "Are you an attorney?" I said, "No, I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here strictly as an advocate for him to help him out because he's too sick to show up on his own because he's got stage 4 pancreatic cancer and he's on oxygen. So I thought I'd come here on his behalf." Well, I filed the complaint informal. Didn't file a formal administrative complaint. I filed an informal administrative complaint. Said, "Listen, if he doesn't stop this, I'm going to make this a formal administrative complaint, and I'm going to demand a formal administrative hearing. I'm going to go after his bond." Well, a couple days later, I was notified that I was charged with unlawful practice of law and contempt of Supreme Court for filing that complaint. So he complained to the Supreme Court, said, "Hey, this guy said he was an attorney." And I showed him my federal bar card with the number 7604. He wrote that number down. And then he checked it out and found out that 7604 was the bar number for a Supreme Court justice here in Colorado. So he charged me with impersonating a public, or what? Yeah, what? He charged me with impersonating a public official and unlawful practice of law. Or no, first they charged me with unlawful practice of law and contempt of Supreme Court. So that's the charge that was against me. So I go to Supreme Court to answer the charges, and I say, here's the problem. I said, you guys are charging me with contempt of Supreme Court and unlawful practice of law, and all I did was file a formal or informal administrative complaint. And under the Federal Administrative Procedures Act, it's a felony to threaten or intimidate me for filing that administrative complaint. And I'm pretty sure threatening me with 180 days in jail for contempt and official misconduct, or contempt of court and unlawful practice of law, constitutes a threat. And he said to the prosecutor, the judge goes, "Is that true, Mr. Eichler?" He goes, "I don't know anything about any Park County complaint. He's crazy. I don't know anything about any Park County complaint." I'm like, I was shocked. I had to sit down. I'm like, "Your Honor, I want that statement made under penalties of perjury." He goes, "Well, we hold our officers under certain guidelines here." I said, "So I can assume for the record that is a statement made under penalties of perjury?" He goes, Well, are you sure, Mr. Eichler? You sure you don't know anything about a Park County complaint?" He goes, "He's lying. I don't know anything about a Park County complaint. He's crazy. I don't know anything about that." I said, "Well, Your Honor, for the record, here's 2 letters from his office." This was in March. I said, "This letter's from December, and you notice all it talks about is the Park County complaint he just told you he knows nothing about, and this is a letter from his office. Now, here's another one from January, signed with his signature on it. And what does it talk about? No, all it talks about is the Park County complaint he just told you he knows nothing about." Now, either Mr. Eichler has a serious mental deficiency where he can't remember things from 3 months ago, or he's lying. And I want him arrested for contempt and official misconduct right now. I said, "I need an officer in here, and I need him arrested for contempt and official misconduct, maybe even perjury." The judge goes, I can't do that. He's our head prosecutor." I said, "Well, he should have thought of that before he committed perjury and contempt and official misconduct, don't you think?" He goes, "Well, you're going to have to file that. You're going to have to file a complaint with his supervisor, John Gleason, because I can't do that." I said, "Oh, you can't arrest somebody for committing contempt and official misconduct in your courtroom?" "I'm pretty sure you can." "Oh, no, I can't do that." So Judge Lucero told me I had to file that complaint with John Gleason, his supervisor. Well, I did. That day I filed the complaint with John Gleason. Gleason writes me back saying, well, we'll look into your complaint when he's done prosecuting you. So I told Gleason, hey man, I really appreciate you putting in writing your ignorance and your stupidity. I really appreciate it when you're stupid enough to put in writing that you suborn perjure of your public officials as long as they prosecute who you want them to. You don't mind that they lie, commit perjury, forgery, fraud, official misconduct. It don't matter as long as they prosecute who you want to. Thanks, because I'm going to use that against you later. So then, 2 days later, after I threatened to have Kim Eichler, the head prosecutor for the state Supreme Court here in Colorado, after I threatened to have him arrested, 2 days later, Wheat Ridge police show up at my door. Well, this guy was a smarter cop than most of them. He said, I need to talk to you something. I need to show you something out here out in my car. Never fall for that trick, people. Never. Oh, okay. I didn't figure I had nothing to worry about, right? So I walked out to the car. As soon as I stepped foot on the sidewalk, he grabbed me and handcuffed me. Said, you're under arrest for felony warrant. I said, what? For what? He says, you're charged with, they charged me with felony bribery of a Park County official. He says, you're charged with felony bribery of a Park County sheriff. I said, what?
You shouldn't have offered him that donut.
Exactly. I said, I offered him a donut. He said, I don't know anything about the case, but you're charged with felony bribery. You have a felony warrant for your arrest. We're taking you in. I said, well, I need to see the warrant. Oh, you'll see it. I know, I need to see it now. He says, no, you'll see it when I take you in and book you. So he takes me in. I said, I need to see the warrant. Well, you'll get to see it when you go to court. I said, that's not how it works, asshole. You can't take me on a warrant that you can't show to me. He says, well, you can go get it from the court. So I go up to the court. I said, I demand a copy of the warrant. Yeah, well, we'll get that to you. No problem. Months go by. Months. They arrested me in March. Finally, after several hearings and me demanding a copy of the warrant and the affidavit of probable cause, never was it provided. So I went up there on December 17th when I finally had another hearing, and I went up with two witnesses. We went to the clerk's window, and I said, I demand a copy of my warrant that I was arrested on. You know what the clerk told me? I don't have it. I've never seen it. It's not in the file. I said, how can you arrest me on a warrant you don't have on file, and you're the court clerk? She goes, well, I don't know. You're going to have to ask the... She goes, I bet you the prosecutor has it. Maybe you can go talk to her. I said, aren't you required to have it by law? Isn't it required to be filed with you, even if the prosecutor does have it? She goes, well, yeah, maybe she made a mistake, but I don't have it, so you're going to have to go talk to her. So I take my two witnesses. I go over to the prosecutor, and I said, I want a copy of my warrant. She goes, I don't have it. It's not in your file, and I've never seen it. I said, well, then it doesn't exist. She goes, well, it's on the computer. I said, lady, a warrant on a computer is virtual reality. It's not real. It has to be on a piece of paper signed by a judge to be legal. Well, I don't know. You have to, go talk to the clerk. I said, she told me she doesn't have a copy of it. She told me you had the only copy of it. She goes, well, no, I've never seen it and I don't have a copy of it, so I don't know what to tell you. So I get in front of the judge, and I said, Your Honor, I demand this case be dismissed immediately with prejudice. Based on what? I said, based on the fact that I was arrested on a non-existent warrant. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, the court clerk doesn't have a copy of the warrant I was arrested on. The prosecutor doesn't have a copy of the warrant I was arrested on, so therefore it doesn't exist. So I was arrested on a non-existent warrant. You know what he said? Oh, I have that in my private file. How many judges keep private files of defendants that the prosecutor and the court clerk aren't privy to? Evidently. Right. Happens here all the time. That same judge has been disciplined by the Commission on Judicial Discipline for keeping private files of defendants that he had arrested for contempt of court, and the guy never actually stepped foot in court once. Never was served with any documents. The judge issued a restraining order saying he couldn't graze his cows on the land that he had easement of for the last 40 years. They said, oh, well, now that my friend, the real estate agent, bought that property, you can no longer graze your cows on that property. Well, if you have easement of property for 40 years, guess what? They can't take it away from you. And so the judge said, if you're caught grazing your cows on this property, we're gonna charge you with contempt. But he never served him with that order. Never. And so, guy, real estate buddy of the judge drives by, sees cows on this property he bought, so he calls his judge buddy. The judge goes and has the sheriffs arrest him at his home for contempt of court. Come to find out, court clerk never had a copy of it. Prosecutor never had a copy of it. The only person that had a copy of it was the judge in his private file. So they said, sorry, but you can't keep private files of defendants, and they disciplined him for it. Later on, he does the same thing to me. And then what does he do? Yeah, he keeps his private files, issues a warrant for my arrest because the head Supreme Court prosecutor for the Supreme Court told him, you need to arrest Riggin. I don't care what for, but you better come up with a reason. And you need to charge him with a felony. So when they charged me with felony bribery, I get in front of the judge and I said, here's the problem you got that I see. To charge me with felony bribery of a Park County sheriff, you have to prove under your statute that the donut I offered him was a $2,000 donut. Now I said, this donut was not rolled on the thighs of virgins or cooked in the tallow of 3 extinct animals. This is strictly a 55-cent Safeway donut, and I have a receipt to prove it. So I said, until you can, are you willing and are you ready and willing to prove that this is a $2,000 donut I offered him? And I said, and the beauty of it is, he never accepted the donut, so the best you can get me for is attempted bribery. But then again, you're going to have to prove that that was a $2,000 donut to charge me with attempted bribery. Felony. He said, you think you're smart, don't you, Mr. Riggin? I said, well, I think I'm smarter than 3 people in this room. I looked at the 2 prosecutors and the judge, and oh man, he coned out. I don't take that from anybody. He says, I'm amending the charge to felony intimidation of an officer and felony criminal impersonation. I said, who the hell do you think I am? He says, well, you said you were a lawyer. You can't say you're a lawyer in the state of Colorado unless you're a member of the Colorado State Bar. I said, well, that's going to be a problem for any Supreme Court justice in this country. What do you mean? I said, well, every Supreme Court justice in the Supreme Court calls themselves lawyers, and not one of them is a member of your club. So if they come to Colorado and they call themselves lawyers, are you going to prosecute them for calling themselves lawyers too? Because they're numbered. Not one of them is a member of the Colorado State Bar, but they all call themselves lawyers. Well, we'll get to that problem when we deal with it. We're going to prosecute you right now. You're the only case we're dealing with. You're the only case we care about. And I'm like, okay. I said, here's the thing. You're committing felonies from a crime from behind the bench under color of law. I said, you do realize that. He said, call him in. Call him in. 9 cops come in 3 separate doors all at once. Big boys, too. And I'm with my friend Tim Tipton, who's like 6'4". He's a big dude, a couple 100 pounds. And he's standing there. Well, I'm sick. At this point, I'm puking in a garbage can. I think I was on oxygen. I'm not sure. But I was really sick. Dying of liver failure. And the cops come rushing, and you get 9 big cops, and they're like pointing at Tim. Is that him? Is that him? They all want to tackle him, They're getting ready to tackle poor Tim. And he's like, it's not me, man. It's not me. And the judge goes, no, it's him. And he points to the guy puking in the garbage can with the crutches, because I was walking with these clamp-on crutches at the time. And, 9 cops, really, there's not a lot of incentive to beat up a guy walking on crutches, puking in a garbage can. You know, it doesn't look good in front of a group of people to beat up somebody.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think this is, Everett, Washington?
Exactly. So they go, what do you want us to do? He goes, just get him out of here. So they hauled me out to the parking lot to my car, told me to get in the car and leave. Actually made the newspaper in Park County. You know, there's a pretty interesting article about that one. But, so yeah, so I ended up winning in state Supreme Court. I got the cop, Officer Corporal Dean Morgan was the guy I filed the complaint with. And I filed the complaint against an officer named Hannigan. Well, Hannigan got fired based on my complaint. Well, at the Supreme Court hearing, I get Corporal Dean Morgan up on the stand. I said, I need to ask you some questions about Officer Hannigan, Corporal Morgan. He goes, well, that's Mr. Hannigan now. I said, Mr. Hannigan, Corporal Morgan, what happened to Officer Hannigan? He goes, well, you know, you got him fired. He got fired because of your complaint. I said, oh, I wasn't aware of that, at least not for the record. So I just wanted to get that on the record. I said, oh, that's too bad. I said, well, Corporal Morgan, he goes, that's Officer Morgan now. I said, Officer Morgan? Let me ask, is Corporal Morgan above or below Officer Morgan? He goes, you know I got demoted because of your complaint. I said, well, actually, Officer Morgan, I'm not the one that filed the complaint. I haven't filed mine yet. That was just a witness that filed the complaint that got you demoted. I said, my complaint's going to get you fired. But I won't digress. It's like, so I get him to admit that, you know, Hannigan got fired and he got demoted. Well, shortly thereafter, he got fired after I filed my complaint. So he admits, yeah, you know, he said, oh, they had a lady that was the dispatcher, or not dispatcher, but she worked at the front desk. She said that I came up to the front desk and I said that I was representing John Ness. I'm here representing John Ness. I'm an attorney, is what she said. I told her. She also said that I was in for 2 hours talking to the officer, and that I talked to him for at least 2 hours. And so they had her testimony saying, well, he told me he was an attorney for John Ness, and he talked to the officer for 2 hours. Well, the officer had a tape. That tape was exactly 20 minutes long. 17 minutes was Tim Tipton talking, and 3 minutes was me talking. So the judge started realizing, well, if she thinks that he told her that he was representing John Ness, but when I came in on the tape recording, the first thing I said was, I'm not here to represent anybody. I'm not representing anybody. I'm not acting as an attorney. I'm here strictly as an advocate for a sick, dying man with stage 4 pancreatic cancer that can't show up and talk for himself. So I'm here strictly as an advocate for him. They had that on tape. And I told him, he said, well, what's that? Because he asked me for my ID. I pulled out ID. He goes, what's that? And I go, well, that's my federal bar card. And he wrote down my federal bar number, 7604. Well, he goes and runs that number with the state Supreme Court and finds out it belongs to a state Supreme Court justice here in Colorado. So that's when he said, so he called the Colorado Supreme Court and said, you need to charge this guy with unlawful practice of law and contempt of Supreme Court. He came and said he was an attorney. And so they did. But, yeah, I'll tell you, man. What's really pissed them off is when I got to the Park County Courthouse, they got a gravel parking lot, right? And there is no way a wheelchair can get, especially by themselves, can get from that gravel that gravel parking lot onto the sidewalk. Can't do it. You'd have to have 2-3 people to pick up your electric wheelchair to put it on that sidewalk.
Doesn't that violate some kind of law?
ADA. So I went down and filed a formal complaint with the Americans with Disabilities Act and their compliance officers. They sent a wheelchair compliance officer to the Park County Courthouse, and he couldn't get out of the parking lot. He gets his wheelchair out, and he can't even get up to the sidewalk or up to the front door. So he gets back in his van and shuts down the Park County Courthouse because they're not ADA compliant and they're receiving federal funds. So he said, sorry, you can't receive federal funds and not be federally compliant with federal law. And if it's not Americans with ADA compliant, it's not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, you can't operate a public facility. So he shut down the Park County Courthouse for 2 days. Oh, were they fucking pissed. That's a lot of money out of their pocket. And a friend of mine, he gets a call, and they said, listen, I don't care how late you got to work or how long you got to do it. We need this ramp up, and we need a doorbell on the front door. Because even when you got to the door, it was double swinging doors you had to go through. Well, how the hell are you going to open up double doors in a wheelchair and open them towards you and go through two of them, one after another? It's not going to happen. So they didn't have a door opener, they didn't have a doorbell, and my friend who was handicapped sat outside that door for 2 hours and nobody opened it. Nobody let him in. And he got an FTA for failure to appear on a cracked windshield ticket, which they arrested him for. Well, they actually stopped and cited him for while he was on the way to the hospital. He's an amputee, and his stump started bleeding because the bone turned inside of the stump and it cut. And so he was bleeding, and his stump was bleeding, and he was in a bad way. And he goes to the local infirmary. He lived in a little town called Bailey. And they said, you're bleeding internally. We can't do anything. You have to go down and get surgery immediately. We'll have surgeons waiting for you when you get there, but the ambulance is 40 minutes away. And if you wait for the ambulance, you're going to probably pass out from loss of blood. So he gets in his truck and he heads down 40 minutes. It's about a 40-minute drive to town. Park County sheriffs pull him over for a cracked windshield. They cite him for a cracked windshield and no seatbelt, which took about half an hour. Meanwhile, he said, I need you to call an ambulance. I'm losing blood. The infirmary sent me to the emergency room where they got surgeons waiting for me, and I need to get to the hospital. The cop said, yeah, not my problem. Have a nice day. Takes off. So my friend Ray drives down to the hospital, and he passes out when he gets to the hospital parking lot from loss of blood. But luckily he made it. He's a tough character, veteran. And they suspended his license, and the whole 9 yards. It caused him all kinds of grief. Why? Oh, because he had a cracked windshield, and he was going, and he didn't have a seatbelt on, and he was going to the emergency room to have surgery. Instead of going, oh, hey, follow me, I'll go with my sirens, and you can, or yeah, I'll have an ambulance here in 5 minutes. No, he didn't do that. He left him there. And so I told him, dude, we need to file formal administrative complaints against that punk, because obviously your health and welfare meant nothing to him. The only thing that he gave a shit about was his revenue, who he could write a ticket to, and how much money he could make. And so that's one of the reasons Park County, I had a couple incidents in Park County. Also, my friend Ray pulls up to the Stop and Save, which is, the only main store there in that town. And there's 2 handicap parking spots. And guess who's parked in both of them?
Cops.
Park County sheriffs. They're in there eating donuts and drinking coffee, parked in the handicap spot. Now this guy's an amputee in a wheelchair, and at that point he wasn't able to walk with his crutches. So he honks at him, waves, points at where they're parked, honks and waves. Then he ends up having to go all the way down and parking way at the end of the parking lot. And he gets his wheelchair out, and he's trying to get out of his truck, you know, and the cops come wandering down there. What's your problem? You got a problem? He goes, yeah, I got a problem. How many times, he says, how many handicapped police officers you guys got working on the force? I'm going to need a list. And which one of you are handicapped? Oh, well, you know, we have a right to park there anytime we want. He says, that's funny. That's not what the law says. Who writes you assholes a ticket when you're parking in a handicap spot? You? He said, I want an officer down here. I want to file a complaint. Boy, they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. So, you know, and I was with him. So, you know, here we filed a complaint against 2 officers for parking in a handicap spot, and they don't like that shit. They're able to do whatever you want, whatever they want, and you don't have a right to complain about it. That's the way they see it. And if you do, well, we're going to make an example of your punk ass. And that's how they do business here. Anybody who sticks their head up gets hammered.
So, it's one thing to have this experience and tales to tell as a layperson or a journalist. How many tribes are you counsel for?
Well, let's see. I work with Lakotas, Dakotas, Nakotas, Oglalas, Miniconjus. I got family in the Blackfoot tribe, the Crows. I was tribal attorney for the Puyallups, Muckleshoots, Tulalip, Snoqualmus, Pilchucks, Kikialis, Yupiks, Aleuts, Togiaks, Shugiaks, Yavapai tribe, Dene tribe, Zunis, Hopis. A lot of different tribes I worked with.
What's the most people... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to...
What's the largest number of people you've gotten out of jail with a single motion?
Oh, let's see. I'd be about 178 people in Snohomish County, thanks to you and Lewis. When I was in jail in Snohomish County, remember I had you guys send me some paperwork in jail, and they finally let me in the general population after 2 days. And I said, hey, any of you guys want to get out of jail? Line up. Anybody with cash-only bail, I want to line up on this side of the table. Anybody with anything else, line up on this side of the table. And I had my cash-only bail briefs, and I had my driving while license suspended brief that listed 1031-100, which lists all offenses you can be arrested for without a warrant, and it did not list driving while license suspended. And so I started handing these out to everybody that was in line, and it was pissing off the cops. You need to show us what you're handing out. I said, you guys will see it soon enough. Don't you worry about it. Oh, they were pissed. They did not like me handing out paperwork. So everybody collects their paperwork, and they go to their hearing. Well, you know what kind of hearing they have in jail? What kind of hearing do you get in jail? Yeah, you're in a concrete room with a video camera and a TV set, and the TV has a split screen. One side's the prosecutor, and the other side's the judge. That's your hearing, right? So I have written on every one of these documents instructions. I said, get in front of the camera and ask them, is this a hearing? Yes or no? Well, yes, this is a hearing. Great. If this is a hearing, then I have a right to have motions filed and heard. Isn't that correct? Oh, God, they were pissed. Well, yeah. Great. Who's going to accept my motions, the video camera or the TV? Because I can't have a hearing unless I can serve a party, right? With my motions, right? So who's going to accept my motions, the video camera or the TV? Well, they had to bring a prosecutor down, 2 clerks, and a copy machine. And the prosecutor had to accept and stamp every motion. They had to photocopy them, give them back a copy, and the clerk had to file those motions. And boy, were they pissed. And every one of them said, hey, you demanded, or majority of them said, you demanded cash-only bail, which is a violation of Article 1, Section 20 of the Washington State Constitution. So therefore, you've already violated and the court rules. And so therefore, you've already violated my constitutional rights and your own court rules, which is contempt of court and perjury and official misconduct. So if you want to continue to do that knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily, don't dismiss my case. But if you don't want to, you better dismiss my case immediately. So they had to let out 178 guys in 2 days. Boy, were they pissed. They don't like it when you start walking people out of jail wholesale. And what's funny is they had some guy they stuck in a cell with me who had his teeth were all rotted out. He had a big scar going all the way down his back, down his neck, and all the way down his back. And he looked like a meth addict or something, And he kept trying to say, hey, I'm going to get these cops. I'm going to get them. And I'm like, really? He says, yeah, I'm going to get these bastards. I said, you really want to get the cops? He goes, yeah. I said, well, I can tell you how to really get these bastards. Oh, yeah, good. How? I said, you sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil, and you write out a formal administrative complaint against them. Well, that's not what he wanted to hear. No, I mean, I'm going to get them. I said, well, that's the best way to get them. You ruin their careers. You cause a formal complaint. They have demand a formal hearing. They got to have that hearing, demand it be put on their permanent administrative record. I said, you can really fuck them up. No. That's not what I mean. I mean, I'm going to take them down. I said, no, that's the best way to take them down. Well, they were trying to set me up with conspiring with another prisoner to assault an officer. That was their plan. But unfortunately, they didn't have anybody quite as dumb as they were. So they were trying like hell to get this guy to conspire with him to assault an officer. And, the best I could conspire with him to do is file an administrative complaint. Put it in writing, dude. You'll screw him worse than anything. I'm sure they had it all tape recorded and shit. Well, the guy goes, well, they're going to put me in solitary for 3 months, so I won't see daylight for at least 90 days. So, I'm getting transferred to solitary, so I'll see you. So he leaves the cell, and that's the last I see him. Well, 20 minutes later, I get bonded out. And I get out of jail. So my friend who put up his house to bail me out, Graydon Collins, he's out there waiting for me in the car with his son, Mike, and he says, hey, man, we thought you were going to die if we left you in there, so I put my house up to get you out. And I said, holy shit. I was sitting in the back seat of his car. I sunk down, and here was this guy with the rotted teeth and the scar going all the way down his neck and down his back with a leather jacket on, walking out of the sheriff's parking lot for the sheriff's office. And I'm like, holy shit, that guy's the jail narc. I kind of suspected it, but I didn't know for sure. Yeah, here he's walking out. I'm doing 90 days in solitaire. You don't see me for a while, Yeah, right. Yeah, and he's walking out, 30 minutes later, walking out with a leather jacket on out of the sheriff's office. So, so they put these jail snitches in there to try to get you to conspire to commit some kind of crime so they could charge you with more crimes while you're in jail if they don't have a good enough case against you. You got to love these guys.
That's something else.
That's your tax dollars at work right there.
So the charges in Colorado on practice the law without a license and felony bribery for offering a pig a donut, what ultimately happened with those?
Well, the Supreme Court ruled that I was fully within my rights to file this administrative complaint, and under the Administrative Procedures Act, it is a felony to threaten or intimidate somebody for doing that. And so they dropped all the charges against me. And then shortly after that, I pointed out to the prosecutor in Park County, because see, here's the thing. Once I was charged in the state Supreme Court, and I caught that prosecutor lying and tried to get him arrested, he had me arrested in Park County 2 days later, and they prosecuted me in Denver, downtown Denver, at the Supreme Court. And while at the same time, they were also prosecuting me in Park County, which is a good couple-hour drive up in the mountains, in an old place called South Park. You ever heard of it?
Yeah, right.
And seriously, that's the name of the town that they prosecuted me. It's called Fairplay, but it used to be known as South Park, and they still today, to this day, call it South Park. So, that's where the cartoon came from. And the cops are just like the ones you see on the cartoon. Pretty damn funny. But so here they're prosecuting me in South Park, which is hours away, for the same thing that they're prosecuting me in downtown Denver at the Supreme Court for. Same complaint. So I pointed out, isn't that double jeopardy? Because where I come from, if you're tried in two separate courts for the same offense, that's double jeopardy. You know what the judge told me? Well, whoever convicts you first, Mr. Riggin, the other courts agrees that they will dismiss the case against you.
Jeez.
So I'm like, wow, that's a swell deal. How do I get, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
Now, where's the jail in Park County?
It's in Fairplay, which is a couple-hour drive up in the mountains, up at about 11,000 plus feet.
I mean, it's in the basement, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did their elevator work when you were in their jail?
Nope. Oh, no, that was Jefferson County. They originally arrested me and took me to Jefferson County. And they brought me into
about that.
Yeah, they brought me into the jail in Jefferson County. And then I got bonded out. And they said, they took my cane away from me when they first brought me into the cell. And then they said, all right, well, you're free to go. So I started they started hobbling over to the elevator, and he says, oh, this elevator's closed. I said, well, I came down this elevator. I'm going back up in this elevator. He says, no, you ain't. Nobody's going up in this elevator. It's closed. You're not using it. So they made me crawl up the stairs to get up to where my cane was. Because I can't walk upstairs without a cane. So I had to go up on my ass. Sit down the stairs, scoot up another stair. Work that, it took me a while to get up the damn stairs. And last I checked, that's a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act as well. So, yeah, these guys are real pieces of work, I'll tell you. I know.
Colorado's finest.
Yeah, Colorado's finest, I'll tell you. And what's funny is the judge that I have right now, Jean Woodford, her father, in 2007, prosecuted a case. Well, he was the judge. Basically, the guy got charged with the same thing I'm charged with, violating a protection order where no threat was ever made. They hand out protection orders in this state like candy. You could get one for a dirty look. I've got reports where the lady tried to get me charged for violating a protection order because she said he looked right at me like he was going to get me. You need to charge him. He looked at me like he was going to get me. They said, well, what did he say? Well, nothing, but he looked at me like he was going to get me. So that's a violation of the protection order. The cop said, I don't think it keeps him from looking at you. I'm pretty sure that they can't, we can't violate him for just looking in your direction.
Well, that's a sexual act.
Yeah, exactly. He looked at me like he was going to get me. Oh, okay. Well, we better go get him then. So, this lady has over 80 police reports with my name on it. and not one arrest. I've never been arrested there other than, recently for the violation of the protection order. That's an 8-year-old civil protection order that they made permanent and invoked the Brady Bill based on a threat to litigate. So in front of a real judge. Now, see, what happened was in 2007, some guy that called himself a patriot he was charged, same thing. He had the exact same case as me. Violation of an old protection order that he was never served with, for constitutionally protected free speech, basically. So he removed that case to the 10th Circuit here in Colorado, the Federal District Court, where Judge Eugene Woodford was the presiding judge of the Federal District Court, the father of the judge I have now. And that judge drug him through court for years and denied everything without even reading or hearing it. Just denied. And the guy got fed up and he went and filed a lien against the judge's property. And then the judge had him charged with bank fraud and all kinds of other shit. So the guy ended up going to prison based on a threat that didn't exist and based on violation of a protection order that legally couldn't be issued. So I'm thinking she's been taking lessons from her daddy and she's doing the same exact thing that he did. It worked for him, why wouldn't it work for me? Well, because I'm not stupid enough to file liens against the judge's property. If I was to lien a judge, I would lien his bond and his oath. And that's something they can't arrest you for. That's legal. But I'm not going to file any liens. I'm not that stupid. I will file a criminal complaint against him. I can deal with that. But I did file a criminal complaint against this judge and the prosecutor and the cops because the cops walked right through the front door, pushed my doctor into the closet and came and took me into custody without a warrant. And when I demanded a warrant, after I got out of jail, I said, I demand to see the warrant I was arrested on. They said, the head court clerk for the last 8 years in Jefferson County. I said, ma'am, this affidavit of probable cause isn't an affidavit because it doesn't even have a jurat on it. You know what she said? Head court clerk for the last 8 years in Jefferson County said, what's a jurat? I had to sit down. Like, let me sit down for a minute. You don't know what a jurat is, and you're the head court clerk for Jefferson County for the last 8 years? Yes. And you're the first person that's ever asked for a copy of the warrant. I said, that's not my problem, ma'am. So she printed off a copy of the warrant. She goes, oh, this is a warrant upon affidavit, a WAF. I said, what the hell's that? Oh, well, we don't actually print the warrants out. The affidavit's submitted, and then we put we put the warrant on the computer. Oh, so let me get this straight. You don't ever actually print out a warrant, and you don't ever actually have a judge sign the warrant. You just arrest people on it because it's on the computer, right? Yeah, that's about it. Well, that's funny. I got a federal case that says if you don't update your computer system, that you're criminally liable. You, the clerk. And I said, and the beauty of that is, the law is pretty clear. There has to be a signed document called a warrant. And it has to have a judge's signature on it. Not a clerk's, not a stamp. It has to be signed and reviewed by a judge. Was that ever done? I'm not here to answer your questions, Mr. Riggin. They said, yeah, that seems to be your answer for everything. I said, what exactly are you here for? Well, I'm here as the head court clerk for Jefferson County. But you don't know what a jurat is? No. I said, ma'am, do you realize that if you got in front of a federal judge and you admitted that you've been the head court clerk for Jefferson County for 8 years, but you don't know what a jurat is, you know you'd go to jail? She hit a button, and a bunch of cops showed up. All of a sudden, I had 5 sheriffs. What's the deal? Is he threatening you? She goes, yeah, he threatened me. And they start putting their hands on me. I said, get your fucking hands off me now. I said, I've got a witness. I didn't threaten her. I said, I told her, I gave her a little legal information that she was unaware of. That's not a threat. Well, what did you say? I said if she admitted to a federal judge that she didn't know what a jurat was, which is required on every affidavit in this country to be an affidavit, I said if she admitted that to a federal judge, she'd go to jail for official misconduct, because she can't pretend to be the head court clerk of a court and not know what a jurat is. I said, that is the basic minimum for a clerk. And I said, every affidavit issued out of this court without a jurat isn't worth the paper it's printed on. That gives me an idea. I think I'm going to have to really enforce that issue more than anything. Because if I enforced that issue and said, really, show me how you guys can issue an affidavit that doesn't have a jurat on it. And how can you call it an affidavit when by federal law it doesn't comply with the term affidavit? Because an affidavit, by definition, has a jurat. I don't think they'd have much of an answer on that one. Ooh, that does give me, I'm going to have to sue them over that alone.
Yeah, it seems to me, Kurt, that really the only choice is to pit one jurisdiction against another by taking state of Colorado matters to federal district court, and because it's obvious that nothing matters to anybody employed by government in the state of Colorado, that you basically have to have it weighed by federal district court. You don't have a choice.
Well, the problem with that is Judge Gene Woodford's dad was the head presiding judge of the federal district court for 15 years.
Yeah, but you do your best, and I mean,
oh yeah,
it's really
that's why I'm going to the 13th Circuit. They don't know. I mean, he ain't all connected with the 13th Circuit like he is the 10th Circuit. I got a feeling if I filed something in the 10th Circuit, it'd be thrown out really quick.
So back to my point, pit one jurisdiction against the other, take them into a hostile venue. We're coming up on 3.5 hours. I caught you on a real good day. I really appreciate you taking up this time with me. I have another conference call in a half an hour, so I'd like to cut this short, but get in another one with you here in the next week or so. Are you open to that?
Sure.
Okay.
You bet.
That's great. Now, in closing, what do you think the remedy is for the citizens of Colorado who stand to be victimized like this any day and in any encounter with their servants?
Well, really read carefully the law you're being charged with. Like in my case, I was kind of out of it because I've been having problems with my liver and all this stuff, and my blood, I'm kind of going through the same symptoms as a person who's dying of liver failure. So I'm having, some problems with clear thought and stuff like that. I don't have enough blood going through my liver, so it's kind of a problem. But what I see is read really carefully the statute you're charged with. Like in my case, they charged me with harassment. Now, under the harassment statute, you have to do what's considered an obscene gesture to be charged with harassment. And an obscene gesture isn't flipping the bird. Because I've got a picture of George Bush flipping the bird. I've got a picture of Dick Cheney flipping Congress off and telling them to fuck off.
Yeah, now I just emailed you a picture of Harry Reid flipping somebody off. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've got this brief that was actually prepared by the attorney that I made them assist me in my state Supreme Court case. And that brief it's a kick-ass brief. The guy was named Dave Kaplan. And David Kaplan submitted He submitted a brief on behalf of Suzanne Reynolds. Oh, maybe not. John Taylor. He was representing John Taylor, and John Taylor was arrested for telling a girlfriend or ex-wife, one or the other. He told her, "Fuck you, fuck women," and he gave her the finger. They charged him with violating a protection order. They prosecuted him, and Dave Kaplan filed this brief that says, motion to dismiss the constitutionality of fuck you, fuck women, and the giving of the finger. And he did this excellent brief on, a credible threat means a threat of physical action or repeated conduct that would cause a reasonable person to be in a fear of the person's safety or the safety of his or her immediate family. CRS 18-9111. Basis of the prosecution is statements made by an El Paso County case in which the defendant contends he is barred by collateral estoppel. Separate motion filed and supporting documents to be provided at the hearing. Therefore, the motion addresses the communications made by the above captioned matter. On or about July 9th, 2003, it is alleged that Mr. Taylor made the following verbal and non-verbal statements to Ms. Chavez. Fuck you, fuck women, along with the middle finger and $100. I don't know what the $100. And it says, hey, it has to be a credible threat. In order to provide context for the alleged crime, we must first examine the history of fuck and the finger and its evolution in society. Fuck's earliest record use is prior to the year 1500 from the English-Latin poem Flen flies non suet in qui... It's Latin, which translates to, they are not in heaven because they fucked the wives of Eli. Although still offensive to some, fuck is a more commonly used and accepted term in today's 21st century society than it was in the past. And he just briefed it out and really put a good brief together on the use of the finger and the word fuck and fuck you, and how it's protected free speech under the First Amendment. And then he did a word search. Okay. You're gonna love this one. Mr. Taylor is alleged to have spoken two different variations of the root word fuck. The following table depicts the number of internet search engine hits for Mr. Taylor's alleged fuck you and fuck women statements as compared to fuck itself and other commonly heard words and phrases. All results are approximate. Fuck, approximate number of hits is 45,300,000. Fucking, 46,200,000. Fuck you, 5,760,000. Fuck women, 4,020,000. Fucker, 1,230,000. Dad, 9,520,000. Baseball, 20,800,000. Hot dogs, 4,200,000. Apple pie, 1,720,000. Chevrolet, 6,840,000. Sticks and stones may break my bones, 36,500. So, fuck, fucking, fuck you, and fuck women, and fucker all have more hits than baseball, apple pie, Chevrolet, and hot dogs. Fuck has distinct meanings based on the context in which it is used when formally defined. Fuck, 1680. Usually obscene, an act of copulation. Usually obscene, a sexual partner. Unusually vulgar. Damn. Usually vulgar, used especially when with as a meaningless intensive. When the fuck do you want from me? Oh, what the fuck do you want from me? Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. The Cambridge English Dictionary Reader's Online Dictionary adds more zest to the definition of fuck and fucking. Emphasis in original. Fuck. Extreme anger. Exclamative offensive. Used when expressing extreme anger or annoyance, or to add force to what is being said. Fuck, the bloody car won't start. Shut the fuck up. Who the fuck does she think she is telling me what to do? Fucking. Adjective. Adverb. Offensive. Used to emphasize a statement, especially one angry one. What a fucking waste of time. He's a fucking idiot. He'd fucking better well do it. Yeah, so sorry about this, guys, but I don't mean to get way offensive, but I'm being prosecuted for flipping the bird. I never actually used the words. I never actually said the word fuck. I just gave her the bird. And comes down to, in English history, going back to the 1500s, and even maybe as far back as 1200, Battle of Hastings, the English were fighting the French. Well, the English invented the English longbow. And the English longbow was made out of yew wood, and it would shoot farther than any other bow that the French had, or anybody else in Europe had at the time. So they were able to reach out and touch people before they could get close enough to shoot them, which is a problem when you're trying to take somebody down. If they can hit you farther away than they can, it makes it pretty tough for you to win against them. So the French declared that they were going to cut off the middle finger of every Englishman they found. And they came and invaded England. Well, the English kicked their ass because they had the English longbow. And so after the battle, when the English kicked their ass, they stood on top of their castle walls and showed them their middle finger and said, "See, we can still pluck you." From plucking the yew. You needed your middle finger to shoot the English longbow. So that's where it came from. Plucking of the yew.
Yeah, and
not necessarily. Cool.
At this point, I'd like to cap it off by saying, fancy that it ends up in Colorado, where it's such a fitting gesture for the accounting we've just heard about what everyone in Colorado faces if you encounter a public servant. The law simply doesn't matter. Thanks very much, Kurt, and I'll be in touch very shortly, probably tomorrow, and I look forward to the next opportunity to get you on the phone like this. I really appreciate you taking all this time for us, and take care of yourself, okay?
All right, brother. Take care, and thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
And if anybody gets a chance, they can Google my name, and the Westward actually published a copy of the Supreme Court decision. So if you Google Kurt Riggin, go on to the Westward, they actually have a copy of the Supreme Court decision that was ruled in my favor a couple of years ago. So it's interesting reading, and the article is called "The Strange Case of Kurt Riggin." So your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, great. Okay, man. I'll be in touch.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Okay, everybody. Kurt Riggin, in 2006, when I had concluded that federal law was utterly futile, a ridiculous treatment you get in court for believing in the tax code, somebody introduced me to Kurt Riggin, and he steered me totally away from everything the Patriot movement does on the state law level. And I never looked back, and you hear only arguments in the box, and he still knows 10 times more about the law than I do. And up here in Washington, he's got bodies of prosecutors all over the place. He was just a real slayer when he lived in Washington, and got 3 judges kicked off the bench, one of whom committed suicide. And we'll see what he has to say in the next seminar. This episode of No Confidence is officially over. Nothing you heard should be construed as legal advice. Anything that sounds like that to you, just consider it something somebody else might do on a planet far, far away. Where the law matters, it doesn't matter here. We just heard 3.5 hours worth of proof of exactly that. And later on today, I'll have this call posted in my archive. You're also welcome to go to wevgov.com and click on YouTube or YouTube 2 and watch the video seminars I have online. And I look forward to seeing you on the next call. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.